Welcome, everyone, to the 37th edition of the NYVC Sports Future of Sports. We've got a great program on tap today. Thank you to my good friend Jeff Folk for putting together such an amazing program. And before we start, we've got an exclusive announcement today. NYVC Sports have become an official partner of the AW 2020 Bubble Hockey League, which includes naming rights to the bubble, exclusive streaming rights to Thursday afternoon games, and patches on the uniforms. The Bubble Hockey League will be played in the bubble to keep the bubble hockey players safe. Watch this space. Thanks again, NYVC Sports, and let's get to it.
Thanks, Lance, and I'm excited to welcome a tremendous lineup today. We've got 2.5 hours of content over 4 panels, and I want to give a quick intro and welcome and explain why we're here and a little bit of the background of how we've gotten here, and then get out of the way for our tremendous lineup of panelists. So we created NYVC Sports in 2011. It was a time where there was not a lot of investment or entrepreneurship in the sports world. That's significantly changed over the last 9 years. And our intent was to bring together the entrepreneurs, the investors, and the legacy sports business communities, because each were participating in their own in sort of separate environments. You had the sports business community meeting at Sports Business Journal events and jewel sporting events like the Super Bowl and others. You had entrepreneurs doing meetups, and other types of hackathons. You had investors meeting in beautiful hotels and doing all sorts of different types of networking. But those 3 communities weren't integrated together. And we thought, wouldn't this be great if we could follow the money from the investor to the entrepreneur into the sporting world? And that deepened Parikh. And he said, let's do it. So we created this group. We've since launched in Boston, San Francisco, and London. And we're talking about 2 additional cities over the next year. We launched Sport Hiatus in March after the NBA intelligently shut down the season due to COVID, and covered what was innovative and interesting and creative and new during the quarantine and the pandemic. And sports are back, and not a moment too soon, and we're excited to welcome them back. So without further ado, please actively engage in social media at Global VC Sports. And we'll take you through a great run of show. So John and David, it's a pleasure to introduce you, and I'm excited to hear your dialogue and to get out of your way. So thanks so much for being here. And John, the show is yours.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Kozner, and I'm pleased to be joined today by my longtime friend and colleague, David Levy. Both of us would like to thank Jeff Volk and all the people at Global VC Sports for organizing today's event, and we're pleased to be at Advertising Week. So a little bit about David. David Levy is one of the most effective, plugged in, and popular leaders in sports and media, and he's been so for a long time. David had a 30-year run at Turner Broadcasting that saw him progress from a top sports salesperson to the president of the enterprise. As president, David oversaw TNT, TBS, CNN, Cartoon Network, plus advertising sales, marketing, and distribution, and corp dev. Everything from top entertainment shows to children's series. In 2018 alone, Turner Programming was nominated for 33 Emmy Awards. But we know David mostly for his huge achievements in sports media, where he led Turner beginning in 2003. David has personally negotiated major rights agreements with the NBA, the NCAA, and CBS for March Madness, Major League Baseball, the PGA Tour, and UEFA. David brought the Final Four to TBS in 2014 and the Men's Collegiate National Championship basketball game in 2016. He has been a pioneer in esports, bringing the E-League, CSGO, to network TV in 2016 in conjunction with William Morris and IMG. David accelerated Turner's digital presence with his acquisition of the NCAA's digital rights in 2010, Bleacher Report and the House of Highlights in 2012, and the streaming company iStream Planet in 2015. And in 2017, he used the acquisition of the UEFA Champions League rights to launch BR Live, the company's direct-to-consumer offering in sports. 2 years later, again ahead of his peers, David forged a betting content deal with Caesars, opening a Turner studio in Las Vegas, creating specific content for the gaming audience, and ushering in the new business of affiliate fees for media companies. And perhaps most significant to sports fans, David helped create and nurture perhaps the best sports studio program ever, Inside the NBA, featuring talent he developed: Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, Shaquille O'Neal, and Charles Barkley. After David left Turner in 2019, following the AT&T acquisition, he had a brief stint as president and CEO of the Brooklyn Nets. Recently, David formed Back Nine Ventures, a sports consulting and investing firm. David is also a senior advisor to Rain Group, a senior advisor to Arctos, private equity firm looking to buy small stakes in pro sports teams. And earlier this month, he joined the Andbox Esports organization as an investor and chairman of their advisory board. So clearly, he's not wasting time. It's a thrill for me to do this one-on-one with David, having worked with him since 1989 when I was the director of broadcasting at the National Basketball Association, and David was our key sales executive. So getting started, David, you know, at Turner, among other things, you were a builder, and you created a sort of digital presence from scratch, really, because it didn't exist prior to your taking the commands there. How did this roadmap come together? I'm talking about acquisitions like Bleacher Report, House of Highlights, iStream Planet.
Yeah. Well, John, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for having me here today and really getting to spend some time with you. You are a friend and a colleague, and it's always nice to see you even in these challenging times.
Yeah.
You know, Bleacher Report, House of Highlights, iStream Planet. I mean, those kind of acquisitions, I feel fall in a bucket for me of need versus wants. And these were needs. They weren't wants. And the reason why they were needs is because we had to compete with companies like yourself, with ESPN and NBC and ABC and Fox for sports rights. And Bleacher for us we didn't have at Turner a sports destination, a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week sports destination. You know, we had certain premium sports properties, but to talk to our audience on a 24/7 basis, we had no consumer-facing product. Nobody cared about Turner Sports because that was more of a brand for inside Turner. It wasn't a consumer brand. No one went to turnersports.com to get highlights or anything of that nature. So Bleacher Report became our sports destination and allowed us to speak on a 24/7-day-a-week basis to our fans. And it also allowed me to go after sports rights because as sports rights were starting to merge their digital rights, their mobile rights, their streaming rights, I had to make sure I had a platform to actually execute and use that content diligently. So ESPN had ESPN, you know, had its networks, had its mobile devices, had its, you know, website, and we needed to compete. Otherwise, my models wouldn't be as effective. House of Highlights was kind of interesting in the sense that, you know, in this day and age, people pull down content illegally all the time. And my friend Omar, who's now over at ESPN, was doing an incredible job in using NBA highlights illegally, but using them in a very unique way at the time, covering with augmented reality type things and so forth. And we're starting to get a huge following. And in fact, LeBron James and a lot of the NBA players were following House of Highlights. And we went down, Dave Finocchio, who was the founder, we went down to Florida, knocked on his garage door and explained to him that that was illegal. And he can do one or two things: shut down or allow us to acquire him and become part of our family at Bleacher Report, which he chose the latter, which I think was smart. And that is a tremendous brand, and I think something that should still be pushed out. And iStream Planet, I think, leads to a lot of conversations where we are today. We knew, and as well as ESPN and some of our competitors, we knew very early on that streaming was going to be a big part of the sports industry for the future. And I'm always a big believer in not looking from the outside in, but actually work from the inside out. And so I'd rather know all the problems with streaming and what the challenges may be and so forth. and iStream was available. We did a remarkable deal structure with them, with Mio, who's the owner of iStream Planet. And we really got to understand, and we kept it as a separate business. I mean, NBC was using it and CBS was using it. And it was a way for us to actually understand the streaming business for sports, live streaming sports, and still is today. So I would say all of them were needs versus wants. And those acquisitions worked very, very well for us.
Yeah, I was always super impressed that you were willing to go out of house. It was well covered at the time that you had to sort of part your agreement with Sports Illustrated, which was inside the company, and that had to be hard. And yet, we take a look at, say, where Bleacher is today and where SI is today. It seemed like a visionary move. And the House of Highlights, to me, not dissimilar to Inside the NBA, showed an appreciation for what fans actually like, as opposed to like what we think should be good for them. It was sort of an intuitive thing. And Omar, he's at ESPN now, but his whole awareness, his whole brand, it's really risen up in an astonishing way.
He understands how to reach the culture. I mean,
Right.
really about culture and what the Generation Zs and the next, millennials of the world, and how they actually view content and how they watch games. I mean, you can watch an entire NBA game through House of Highlights.
Both of us saw just this past week, there were two really interesting studies on Gen Z behavior, one from a company called Morning Consult, one from Tiffany Zhang, who's at Zebra. And it raises, and this sort of gets to work you've done, it raises the real threat and opportunity for sports, certainly coming out of COVID, right? Which is, how do you attract young audiences? How do you get them to pay? Your experience, I suspect, tells you that young audiences are different than, say, the way we grew up following sports and caring about it.
Yeah, and how to reach them, right? I mean, I think what I see is some of the trends in COVID as we are right now, and maybe even coming out of COVID. And I'll break the trends off into two different. One is the trends, what I see in production, and what may or may not happen in the future of production. I think a lot of good came out of this because you had to be creative in your camera angles, and creative, even in some of the rules and regulations. Like, I don't know if baseball will keep it, but I think it's very, very interesting in putting a man on second base in extra innings and not having 27 inning games. Now,
right.
I'm not a traditionalist. I'm a realist. And I don't think 27 inning games are valued to anybody. It's not valued to the franchise. It's not valued to the players. I don't think it's valued to TV ratings. So there may be things that, in rules and regulations for different leagues that may come out. I mean, even the travel that the NBA, I think the NBA games have been very, very competitive and really quality games. And I think that has a lot to do with, you're not traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast. You're not having, to stay in hotel rooms. You're not going to bars at night. I mean, whatever
Right.
young players are doing. So they're focused on one thing, and that's basketball. And you can see that on the court and the quality of that. But I'll put the gaming and the production, because I even think production will be different. You don't have to fly that many people anymore. I don't know if talent will have to go and, you can actually broadcast a game from a studio, which no one thought you could possibly do, yet it looks fine on the television side. But I'll get down to where I think some trends that I saw in three areas. One, and all of this was going to happen anyhow. I think COVID accelerated it, and accelerated to a large extent. Like, even in business, and I don't mean to bop all around here, but is anybody surprised that JCPenney went out of business? No, it was just accelerated because of COVID. And did anybody think that Amazon was not a great brand? No, it was accelerated because of COVID. So I think even in the business side, things just accelerated. Hertz Rent-A-Car being out of business. I mean, when was the last time anybody rented a car with Uber? And so all I see is acceleration, and three areas of acceleration for me in the sports side. One, I think, is betting and gamification. I think you're going to see a lot of mobile betting move very, very quickly here in the United States. much faster than I thought it would do. And that has a lot to do with state by state needing income based on them providing what they needed to do for COVID. I think there's going to be opportunity to tax and regulate gaming. And I think gaming is going to, you see in the stock markets today, you see DraftKings and some of the Penn Gaming, stocks moving the way they are is because, stock markets tend to look at trends. And I think the trends is going to be very, very upward trending for the gaming business. So that's one trend I think coming out of COVID that I think accelerates. The second is esports. I think people really, if you take a look at the amount of hours that people spend on Twitch and used and gamed and used their internet with their friends, I think you're going to see an acceleration in the esport world very, very quickly. And then lastly, streaming, cord cutting. And you take a look at some of the companies, my past company, AT&T, launching HBO Max in the middle of COVID, Disney Plus launching, Peacock launching, and those are with the existing media companies, let alone Apple and Hulu and Amazon and Walmart Plus and all of these new streaming services that are entering into the field. I do think you're going to see an acceleration of people viewing habits change to them, cord cutting continue to happen, and being accelerated by the COVID and the trends.
Do you think this may be a bad analogy, but I sort of suspect that sports is going to follow music. Like if you look at what's happened in the music business between the streaming services, revenues dipped for a while and now they're growing, and there are a variety of different ways that musicians and bands are making money. I wonder if something similar is going to happen with sports, because what doesn't add up to me is the pay TV bundle has been the fulcrum. It's been the center revenue source for sports for as long as you and I have been in the business, and that's under siege now. And even if you say that, even if one says that fans would still prefer a bundle because you like more than one sport and it's efficient that way, that bundle is not going to be 100 million or 80 million. It's shrinking, and the best entertainment content, including at companies like the ones used to run, are no longer going to be in the bundle. Really, they're going to be on HBO Max or on Peacock or whatever. So I certainly foresee like a transition period for sports over the next 3 to 5 years to get to whatever the sort of new normal is, as opposed to all of us had the bundle and that's how we got sports.
Listen, I may disagree a little bit with you on this. The one thing you have to go back to is basics and fans, and I'll talk about the let's call the big five sports.
Right.
They still need to reach the next generation of fans. And television is still the largest reach vehicle out there in the marketplace. And I'm not quite sure the FANGs are ready to take over the incredible sports rights. Do I see it as part of an overall package? Do I see how sports content? I mean, one of the things that I was pushing through when I wore a different hat on the Turner side, and you mentioned it a little bit in the opening, which is BR Live. I do believe there are opportunities for a la carte sports properties, maybe watching a single NBA game and pay $7 for it, which was happening with Adam. Adam and I created that deal and put it on League Pass that you could actually buy a single game. And then before I left, we even got it down that you could buy a half a game or even a quarter of a game.
Fourth quarter, right.
The fourth quarter, but you could also buy, from the third quarter on, there were different pricing. And in fact, you could almost log in with 2 minutes left in the game. And what I do think will happen in the future, and I'll just use my brands that I know, but you can use ESPN, you could use Fox, you can everything. But if you're sitting in a restaurant, hopefully soon, indoors, but even if you're outdoors and you're sitting at a restaurant and it's 9:30 and your phone pings and it's a Bleacher Report ping saying the Knicks are tied 101 against Golden State. Do you want to watch for $1? You may click and watch the overtime the last 2 minutes of the game while you're sitting there. And then it may also say, and do you want to bet? And here's the line. And you
Right.
can push another button and bet a $5 bet on the last 2 minutes of the game. Those are going to be happening in the next 3 to 5 years. No question in my mind. But do I think there's going to be a full package sold to an HBO Max, an ESPN Plus? No. Do I think it's going to be part of the negotiations with each of these media companies? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that ESPN will not negotiate any new league rights without something going to ESPN Plus or ESPN Mobile or
Right.
wherever else they want to put it. And the same thing with NBC, with Peacock, and the same thing. Now what's interesting is that leaves out the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Googles because they don't really have a media partner.
Right.
One of the things that I think is stopping the leagues, not just the reach vehicles of these FANG companies, but they don't have production capabilities. They can't produce the kind of quality content that our ex companies have done in the past. They don't have the talent pool. And so eventually, if they're going to get into the sports, which I think they may, and I think they will, I don't say may. I mean, Netflix is the only one I don't know if they need to go into the sports area. I think more, I could see more Amazon, which is dabbling their toe on a global basis, and maybe Apple. But they're going to have to develop production companies or buy a media company.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense to me that some of the media companies, some of the smaller ones, the new Fox, CBS, could retain for a fortune their NFL rights and then slim down and be assets that could in some way get acquired by technology companies in the future or whatever, because as you said, they have the capabilities, they're broadcasters, et cetera. And to your point, sports needs the reach. The point I was making, which I didn't make clearly though, is that I think with the way audience is fragmented from the Gen Z point that you brought up before, streaming has to be part of that solution, not just because it's a business imperative for the media companies, but because I think that's the only way you're going to reach younger audiences. I'm not saying that the only way to reach them is to put your events on Facebook or Apple, but I think you're going to have well-distributed streaming in order to serve audiences who aren't watching TV in the same way.
100%. I mean, I have my 24-year-old son living with me in these COVID, and he's been with me for 6 months, and he has yet to turn the TV on.
Wow.
I mean, he has not once turned the TV on.
Even
Now,
for a big event.
He's still watching content, but he's watching through streaming.
Interesting. So David, we have a lot of startup entrepreneurs who are watching today. You know, I think they'd all love to have you involved as an investor and advisor in your copious free time. You know, what are you looking for and why? You know, the variety of things that you're doing now. I'm interested as to sort of like how you arrived at each of these different things, and to the extent that you would take on more roles, you know, in what kind of areas.
Yeah, we mentioned a few of them right now. I mean, I you know, through Back Nine Ventures, I've invested in a few companies over the last year and a half, and I focused on really where I think culture is going and where I think trends are going. And we mentioned them prior to, but I am an investor, as you just mentioned, in Andbox, and I think esports is going to be a big part of the future of global sports. I mean, I look at 4 sports as the world gets smaller and smaller because of the content and the internet and the connections that we now have. I think there's 4 truly global sports at the end of this. One is soccer. And I think you're seeing the United States today start catching up to where the world was many, many years ago. And I think that's going to continue to grow. I think the second is basketball. And I think Adam Silver has done a terrific job in pushing out that content on a global basis and how basketball fits into many different cultures, the sneaker culture, the fashion culture, the music culture, as well as the NBA culture itself. So I think basketball is one of the future, is going to be one of the main global sports. Third is combat, where, you know, whether it's UFC or whether it's boxing or whether it's karate or whether it's open championship, I think from a standpoint of a global sport, that truly is a global sport. And the last is esports. And the only reason why we haven't really put that in any bucket right now is it's still a question mark, and the jury is still out on how to make money on it. Because
if you're not a publisher, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you can make money certainly as owning the IP, and they've been doing a terrific job in that. You can see, Epic Games and so, but Epic has even done a fantastic job in understanding that it's not just a gaming, it's a platform. I mean, they're launching music. Travis Scott, launched a song within their platform itself. So these games are becoming platforms in themselves, and be able to launch products and goods and services and things of that nature because of the amount of time that people are on them. And I also think advertising is sneaking its way in there as well. So I invested in esports in the Andbox thing because I still believe that there's valuations in franchises. I mean, I take a look at betting, and right now, from my conversations with a lot of different betting houses and betting companies, esport is very, very small in the betting pool of money and what they take on esports. But I think that'll change dramatically as they understand how to bet on esports and the people who are going to bet on these. When micro bets, when you can almost bet per game and per killing or whatever the case may be, betting does one thing. It engages the consumer more, because you know that if you bet on anything, you're 98% more likely to watch it. If you're 98% more likely to watch it, that means ratings are going to go up. If ratings go up, that means media values go up. If media values go up, that means advertising dollars go up. And if advertising and media values go up, that means franchise values go up. And if you take that all the way through, I invested in a franchise in New York. I think it's the biggest franchise, the biggest market in the United States. They have games of Call of Duty, and they have Overwatch and Valorant, which is a new Riot game. And I think there's still opportunities to grow that brand in New York through a lot of different avenues, merchandising and cafes and things of that nature. So I look at esports as one area, and I look at betting. I'm involved in Simple Bet, which is a micro betting company,
right?
That just did a deal with PointsBet, an Australian company. They've done a deal with FanDuel. They have a free to play game with FanDuel, and the engagement so far that in this NFL season, we're 4 weeks in, has been phenomenal. I mean, it's like 30 minutes they spend on these micro bets. And with really no advertising. And then I've invested in another company called Phoenix, which is a latency. They've solved latency. And if you're going to get into the sports betting business, you need zero latency. And we all know that. You don't need it if you're not betting, right? It doesn't matter if you're 40 seconds behind, if you're in the car or you're, at a restaurant, but it does matter if you're trying to place a bet. So these are the type of trends that I've been looking at and investing in because I see them as really, really important part of the culture and where I think business is going.
You mentioned augmented reality earlier, I think, in the context of House of Highlights. Do you think about AR in the future? Do you think about successor experiences to phones or complementary experiences to phones?
Well, I think you're starting to see. Listen, like esports, no one's figured out a way to make money from it, other than the IP, which you mentioned, and maybe some of the teams that are doing very well with their branding, Cloud9, and so forth and so on. 100 Thieves, excuse me. So, augmented reality is the same kind of thing. I think you saw it in the U.S. Open, or I did. That you could go to a barcode and kind of get what each of the holes looked like and see it from different angles and so forth. It was cute, but it really was clunky, and I don't know if it was relevant. Yeah. So I think you got to get down to relativity, and is it useful to the consumer? You still have to have a useful product if the consumer is going to use it.
Right.
I could see augmented reality if you're in a stadium and you wanted to hold up your phone to the center court of a Laker, use the Laker logo, and that triggers your phone, then triggers content that you may want to use for the second half betting. a way to communicate to the consumer that he knew of that logo. Or if you announced that you could go around the stadium and try to find the billboard that will give you free food or something of that nature.
Totally right.
I think you have to figure out how to use augmented reality in the proper way for have people to actually use it.
Yeah. I'm showing my age, but I grew up really inspired by Wild World of Sports and by Rune Arledge's work. And I've always wondered, as I've observed the growth of esports, and again, you guys were quick into it with the E-League, whether or not there is going to be a role for linear television there. The audience is so attractive. They're so passionate about what they're doing. I know MasterCard, for instance, I believe has gotten involved. I just wonder whether or not ultimately there's a place on linear television. In my heart of hearts, like the League of Legends World Championship would be on network, at least some form of it would, and you'd have a lot of content, again, trying sort of up close and personal, is trying to explain to people who aren't necessarily game players what the phenomenon is. But we haven't really seen that yet, and most of the audience doesn't. They're like your son; they don't even turn TV on. So I'm wondering if I'm just sort of out of touch about that.
You're not. I think the jury's still out on whether TV actually is a place for esports or not. Yes, Turner dabbled in it. I was the first to do that in 2016. And it's still on Turner, I think, on Friday nights. I'm not 100% sure. But
yeah,
the audience really didn't grow to where I thought it was. I mean, and one of the reasons is because the audience isn't on TV. That demographic of, let's call it 18 to 34-year-old or 13 to 34-year-old isn't turning on the TV. And also, esports didn't grow out of the television business. It actually grew out of the digital business. It's a digital product first. And so E-League, which is the league we launched at Turner, 90% of the E-League content was still on digital. It was on Twitch and YouTube. And only 10% was on TV. But that 10% didn't perform as well as it did on the digital side. And so the jury is still out if you're going to be able to take an audience that isn't using that device and that distribution platform and force them to have to go there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be necessary. I mean, right now, the reach that you need in the football and the NBA, you're getting that kind of reach, but you're getting it globally with esports.
Yeah.
And so I think the jury's still out on TV. I can see the big, maybe tournaments going there, but maybe going there with a shared viewership, meaning a dual deal that will be simultaneously streamed both on TV and on digital.
Yeah. I was going to say, I like the model going forward of taking advantage of the capabilities of each of these screens. What you could offer on a really big screen versus what you can get on a phone, and sort of over time customizing that experience. I was going to ask you, because it's intriguing, we're in an era now with really, really low interest rates and a lot of money sloshing around. So I'm interested in the Arctos opportunity because, people are fascinated by teams. Traditionally, if you've been like a limited partner, there's just not much flexibility. So it seems like an idea whose time is coming.
Yeah. I mean, talk about timing. When there are franchises that are struggling right now, and we're talking about, Premier League teams, teams in soccer in Italy and in France, as well as franchises here in the United States. It used to be very, very sexy and easy to buy 2%, 3%, 4% of a team and walk around and say you're a team owner. But it's very hard to get your money out. And when you do get it out, you have to either do it through a tagging right, or you have to find somebody else who wants to buy 2, 3, 4% of a team. And there's less and less people that really want to walk around with 2% of a team. So timing is everything in life. And with some of the challenges going on with some of the franchises, and I'm not just talking about the major ones, but throughout all leagues, Arcos had raised a fund, and they're buying passive investments in sports teams. And passive meaning no voting rights. They're not looking to be in meetings. They're not looking for all-star tickets. We're having dinners with the commissioners. This is about evaluating franchises and seeing what the opportunities could be, just like any other fund. How do you grow? And you evaluate it based on management, on location, on opportunity, on ticket sales, and even merch, and what they've done. So, Arcos was involved with, they didn't actually, they were attached to Blitzer and Josh Harris's bid for the Mets.
Yeah.
We were involved in that. We're involved in a few other franchise negotiations as we speak. And I just think it's perfect timing. And actually not just perfect timing for the teams, but I think perfect timing for the leagues also, because, they don't like these 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% owners. They'd rather have, if they could, a vehicle to be used, and able to, we're going to hold, we're not interested in selling. We're interested in properties that are going to grow, and we're okay hanging around waiting for that opportunity. So perfect timing for that. I think that more and more leagues are going to be accepting these type of vehicles as opportunities, as baseball has done, with Arcos. I see it. I see more and more of these funds happening, just like I see, and everybody on this call may hear about these SPACs that are popping up everywhere. I think these kind of funds will also be a part of the future.
I mean, it just seems to me, it seems to me to be fair to have at least an alternative to the IPO for a way for companies to go public, and the SPACs also, and we saw this with DraftKings, give you a chance to take two companies and sort of merge them together, create a better company, and then take that company public. I'm sure you're fielding any number of inquiries about SPACs today just because of the variety of experiences that you have. So that's clearly going to be, sort of front and center over the next 12 months. And I suspect beyond that.
Yeah. I mean, you got to find a private company that wants to go public, because there's obviously different rules and regulations once you become public of earnings and things of that nature. But it also allows you to use, different funding in different markets, to grow your business.
The last thing I wanted to touch on, and I think it gets to the remarkable career you had between sort of ad sales and rights acquisitions and digital development, is Inside the NBA. My favorite show, and I'm just interested like how it happened and observations you have. You've been doing it, it's been on the air for 30 years or so.
Yeah, John, you have always been a fan. I mean, I used to get those emails from you in the mornings. I stayed up late just to watch the show.
Right.
I remember this line you always say to me, I don't know any other studio show that's actually recorded, although I don't think anybody records anymore. But you used to call and say, I don't know any other studio show that someone records and watches the next day.
Right.
Because it really wasn't a studio show. It was an entertainment show. It was culturally relevant. They talked about topics that other people wouldn't, and they kind of did it in a way that they were sitting in your living room.
Yeah.
And I would love to say that it was me, I had all the magic. It's not. It wasn't. It was really the executive producer, a guy named Tim Kiley, who really understood how to let the guys be themselves. It was and it's each one of them. I mean, Ernie was sort of the ringleader and the ring master of the threesome. And again, we added Shaq late. He's probably 5, 6, 7 years, maybe 6 years in to his deal. But each of them add a unique component. Charles, everybody says Charles doesn't study. He doesn't understand the game. Charles understands the game better than anybody. And in fact, is he sitting in the studio looking over notes? No, but he is watching almost every basketball game. And may not know the player's name or the eighth guy on the bench, but he understands the quality of the game and he's authentic. Charles will say, I always said, Charles, you're one sentence away of being kicked off of television. And he probably was, and he kept me up at night myself personally. And then Kenny sort of understands it more from a general manager perspective. And then, Shaq was understands it from the player's perspective. He was still playing for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So It's magic in a bottle. It doesn't happen that often. And I was proud to be a part of it.
Yeah. So we're getting the hook. But David, really great to talk to you. Fascinating, all the new things that you're involved with, and it's going to be exciting to see what happens. I'm hopeful that we find our way out of COVID. I'm hopeful we find our way back into indoor venues. But until then, we'll spend a lot of time on Zoom. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it back to Jeff.
So first of all, with this audience, there is no hook. There's only a schedule. What a great dialogue, and thank you guys both for diving into so many topical subjects in an industry that we all live in every day. And are there right answers? No. Is there an old normal? No. There's a new normal. There's a next normal. There's a next new normal, and we're all going to be figuring it out along the way. So I think the sequitur is perfect to the next panel. So thank you both, and truly be well and be safe. And
Jeff, thank you. And John, thanks again. Good seeing you guys.
And when there are these things called events again that we've alluded to, they're very 2019. But when there are these things again, we will. I will buy the first round of beverages. And so on to our next panel, which brings me a lot of pleasure to introduce. We've titled it "Navigating the Unknown: How to Stay Optimistic When It Feels Seemingly Impossible." There is no title that can properly summarize this group of individuals. We have 4 hosts and a moderator, each of whom have endured so much to overcome and achieve greatness. And it says a lot about one's character when you are able to endure and go through unimaginable difficulties to come out bigger, better, stronger on the other side of that. And so it's a pleasure to introduce Brandon and Mandy and Tanya and Julie. And there's nothing that I can say that you guys can't say yourself. Brandon, you're standing on the side of the wall. So I don't know how we fix that, but it is pretty cool. I don't know if you. Yes, maybe that works. But thank you guys for being here, and I'm excited to hear and for you to have the platform to share each of your stories, because you're each an inspiration. And thank you. So I'll get out of the way, and I'll come back at the end to do my best to thank you. But it's really a pleasure to have you here, and please share your stories. You've got a group of entrepreneurs and investors and athletes and brands and agencies and sports executives who and hopefully many others who should know all that you've been through to. In a time now more than ever where people don't remember what we do, but they remember how we make them feel. This is exactly what this panel can and should be about. I've been talking to Mandy about this concept for years. And so this will be a mini TED Talk and hopefully inspirational to so many. So thank you guys. And please let me get out of the way.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Hey, everyone, I'm Julie Alexandria, and it is my absolute pleasure to be hosting this panel today for NYVC Sports. Our topic, as Jeff alluded to, is navigating the unknown and how to stay optimistic when it feels seemingly impossible. And I can't think of a better title that sums up 2020 and these past 10 months have been for all of us. I mean, there's certainly moments during the day where I think to myself, so that's what the Mayans meant about the end of the world happening in 2020. Of course. So it is my pleasure to introduce this wonderful panel. Thank you so much to all of you for being here. Let's start with Brandon Marshall, former NFL wide receiver and 6-time Pro Bowler. He's also the founder of House of Athlete. Running on the platform of fitness of mind and body are truly connected. I couldn't agree more. And we have Charlie Davies, soccer analyst for the MLS, former US Olympian. Mandy Antonacci, author, founder. She's a marathoner and creator of The Daily Uplift. We also have Tanya O'Connor, CEO of Copra Global. So thank you all for joining us. I want to give you all an opportunity to share your stories if you can in a truncated version. Give us the cliff notes of your personal experience and what you want to share with our audience today. Mandy, let's start with you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Julie. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. It's so great to finally be here. As Jeff mentioned in the introduction, we have been talking about this for quite some time, but unfortunately, I kept going under the knife on him, and I, could not make it, which is part of my story that we're going to talk about here today. But I'm an author and a founder and recently creator of the Daily Uplift. If anybody follows me on social, they know what that is. But I'm also an active member of NYVC Sports. And I do know that just from some people who were joining today, there's a lot of women who were joining this session today, which I'm thrilled about. I'm the first female board member. And I will say the guys who founded this and just the group and the board in general are amazing. And I know there's a lot of people in sports and entrepreneurship in the tech space out there. And sometimes it could be a little rough on women, and these guys are the best. So I've been quite a silent member for the past couple of years because of one of the reasons why I'm here today. I'm currently recovering from 2 unexpected spinal surgeries in 1 year. And as a runner, and there's a lot of athletes who are both on the panel and in the crowd, you know that immobility can be daunting. And I also think for everybody in the audience, the immobility that we're going through right now can be daunting. I didn't have an accident or an injury. It was just one day I was going through one of my normal runs along the Hudson and my hand stopped working. And then my right arm and eventually my entire right side became paralyzed. And I started troubleshooting what I thought was a hand injury, perhaps a shoulder injury, and ended up being my spine. So it prompted the need for emergency spinal surgery within 5 days. And I was diagnosed with a random genetic abnormality that just came out of nowhere and degenerated my spine to that of a 90-year-old. So I spent a lot of time in bed rest, went through the surgery and the recovery, which forces you to be upright at a 90-degree angle in a hard brace in bed for 10 weeks. And so I did that and, kind of went through the recovery and had some observational moments that we'll talk about here, which is really when you spend a lot of time up, you realize a good percentage of the world that spends it down. And some of the reasons why, which gets into a lot of mental health reasons and really something that I talk about, which is our inherent desire to become invisible. And so I talked a lot about that in my TED Talk called Looking Up in an Epidemic of Looking Down, and, went on my way and really got this message out to the world and tried to create a global conversation that wasn't happening. And then even started to clock double digits, on the track again. And then what should have been my final visit in the year anniversary of my surgery, my final visit to my surgeon, I found out that it didn't work. And for no reason whatsoever, I fell into this tiny window of a 1% margin of error and found out that the surgery failed. So I had to repeat the journey all over again. So the isolation, the immobility, the time in bed rest. So over the past, within that year, I spent 21 weeks of bed rest. And, I'm now kind of coming to and getting strong again. But I do feel like what's interesting and what we'll talk about is, I kind of woke up and saw that the world was now suffering from something I once did, which is immobility, isolation, a looming new normal, and a bit of the unknown. So really, when I started to put my story out there and started to connect with people, because I was so wildly disconnected for so long, it really started to resonate. And that's what sort of kind of snowballed into my book that's to come and the Daily Uplift and what my voice is all about right now.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that had to be so hard to live your life as a mobile professional, as a person who depends on their mobility, who lives a very mobile life, and to all of a sudden be deemed immobile by doctors and professionals. So we're going to come back around. I want to get everyone else's story, and then we're going to talk about what that moment was for you, that impetus that started, that made you want to start the Daily Uplift. So we're going to get back to that. Charlie Davies, soccer analyst and former U.S. Olympian, the stage is yours.
Thank you. There are many facets to my story. Started in second grade. My mother suffered from a severe bipolar disorder, And at the same time, my father suffered from a drug addiction. And so I'm the oldest of two. I had to, I'm 2 years older than my brother. I had to feel like I had to be the mother, brother, father, all wrapped up in one throughout various points of my childhood, witnessing my mother try and commit suicide 3 or 4 times, father go on drug binges, and to just keep moving forward and not let that hold me down. So I was very fortunate to go away for boarding school in high school for 4 years, the same school that Jeff Folk went to, Brooks School. That gave me kind of this platform with no distractions from home, where I could kind of focus on school and being a better athlete. So full ride scholarship to BC, and left after my junior year to turn pro. Went to Stockholm, Sweden, 3 years playing the Olympics in 2008 in Beijing, which was an incredible experience. And then for every soccer player, it's the World Cup. Like, that's what you got to play in. And so I kind of had just broke onto the scene, scoring goals, playing with Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey. Everything was flying. We qualified for the World Cup at 23. I'm thinking, man, I have my dreams in my hand. Like, here we go. And 2 days later, I found myself in an ICU in Washington, D.C. I had been in the back seat of an SUV on the GW Parkway that had flipped, cut in half. Broke my femur, my tib fib, my elbow, lacerated bladder, countless facial fractures, a brain bleed. I was airlifted to the Washington Hospital Center. Someone tragically lost their life in the passenger seat. And so, I woke up after a medically induced coma after a week and a half, countless surgeries, and said, hey, when can I get back on the field? What happened? Because I didn't recall the accident in the first place. So I saw 36 staples down my stomach. I thought, because we had been in Honduras 2 days prior to the accident, I thought I was still in Honduras in a hostel where they had stole some of my organs, because I had seen all these beds around me. And so I started taking out the staples one by one to figure out what they took inside me. And then I figured, after I started bleeding, after I got to probably 3, I said, probably not the smartest idea. But I was fast. I'm like, I can get out of here. Until a nurse came over and said, hey, you need to rest. And I said, you tell me what I'm doing here. And she said, you were in a serious car accident. I said, anybody could say that. Where am I? She's like, Mr. Davies, you were in a serious car accident in Washington, D.C. So needless to say, I think there was real doubt if I'd be able to play professional soccer again, let alone sprint. So I had to relearn how to walk, relearn how to take a shower, to eat. My left arm didn't work because of the nerves were deeply affected from the fractured elbow and dislocated elbow. So like Mandy, not to her severity, but learning how to operate in a wheelchair. When I've spent my entire life running as fast as the wind and scoring goals, learning how to walk again, realizing that I had a second chance at life and that I was going to make up for it. So I didn't have time to sulk. It was, I want to work my way back on the pitch, 12 hours a day, rehab sessions. It took a year and a half, but I got back on the field. My first game in DC, at the doctors, the nurses, the helicopter pilot in attendance, and I scored 2 goals. Now, I was never the same player that I once was. I was never playing in a World Cup, never playing on the national team again. But I just had this spirit about me that I could uplift others. You couldn't complain if I'm hobbling on the field, working every single day just to train and with a smile on my face. For you to complain about playing time or complain about the small things in life. Fast forward, my wife gives birth to our twin boys 3 months early. So they were involved in the NICU for 92 days. And during that time, I was playing for the New England Revolution, going back and forth to Gillette Stadium and the hospital in Boston. It took a big toll on me. I wasn't sleeping right, eating right, which caused me to get injured in a game. I pulled my groin in the first half. Had an MRI to see how severe the pull was, and they found a tumor in my other groin, which ended up being a liposarcoma cancer. To tell my wife, who had suffered from cancer when she was 12, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and to tell her that, she had stage 4, she went through chemo and radiation, that I possibly, could be going through the same thing. And for me, I thought I had lived 8 lives that I had, and this was my 9th. And I thought, this is it for me. I'm not going to be able to see my kids grow up. I'm not going to be able to, be a successful husband and family man. And so fortunate for me, Dana-Farber, they assured me I'd be okay, extensive surgery, and just a three-month monitoring system for 10 years or so. So, I'm 4 years in the clear. I live my life, to the fullest. I take advantage of every day. I'm so appreciative of the people I meet, like yourselves, and to be the best man I can be. So, yeah, that's kind of how I live. Just positive, knowing that you can overcome anything with the right mentality.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I don't really know where to begin other than my question for you is you talk about the physical sort of assimilation to, having to be in a wheelchair and learning how to walk again. That's the physical side. For the mental side, when you say you made that click and you made that decision that I am going to get better, I am going to get back on that field, how long after getting that diagnosis did you make that mental sort of commitment to healing and getting back to where you once were?
It was instantaneous. There wasn't a time for me to sulk. I knew I had put myself in that position to get in the car accident, to be in a back seat and go through some of the things that I had gone through. I felt like I deserved it, and I deserved that pain, and I suffered enough. And the only way to make up for this, to make up for the pain I caused my family, the pain I caused my teammates, the country, because I really do feel that if I was playing in that 2010 World Cup, we probably would have got to a final. So I put it on myself to get out of bed and to work. And I really enjoyed going through the pain because I felt I deserved it. And the harder I worked, the more I knew I could overcome it and get back on the field. So there wasn't a question of if, it was just when.
Well, I have to say, I'm also the mother of a NICU child, so I understand that struggle as well, and that's certainly not easy. Okay, moving on. Tanya O'Connor, CEO of Copra Global. Tanya, welcome to the panel, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what Copra Global is all about.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I don't even know how to follow up with both Charlie's and Mandy's story, and of course, I know Brandon's as well. I just have to say that I'm so honored to be sitting here on this panel with such esteemed individuals, and really, you all are just such the best representation of humanity and self-empowerment. So thank you so much for all that you do in terms of sharing your story and really inspiring so many people. People like you are a big reason why I am doing what I am doing today professionally. And I'll talk about that. I mean, I've had my fair share of adversity, but nowhere near the challenges that Brandon and Mandy and Charlie have all experienced. After spending 25 years in media and entertainment and really like just embracing the whole hustle culture and, going 24/7 all the time. And also as a mother of three, I came to realize that it really was not bringing me fulfillment or happiness. And I had a deep desire to pivot my career and focus on health and wellness. A big reason for that, aside from being a consumer and a student my entire life, was that I have one of my children has had a chronic illness. He has epilepsy. And we've been on a journey with him, obviously, and the cocktail of meds that he's had to take over the years, but also trying to seek out alternative remedies and modalities of healing. And that led me to Chopra Global. The company was founded over 20 years ago by Deepak Chopra. But the company had always been focused on mission versus monetization. So a couple of years ago, when some new investors and capital came into the company to really focus on scaling, that's when I joined as the CEO and really fulfilling a dream of mine. One of the things that I am very, very passionate and focused on day in and day out is that, the health and wellness business, the economy is huge and growing daily. It's a $4.5 trillion economy. But as a population, this is a global population, and this was well before the pandemic, we're not any healthier. As a matter of fact, we're getting sicker, both mentally, physically. Over 60% of adults in this country have a chronic illness, which is primarily driven by stress. and mental health. I mean, we hear and see the numbers on a daily basis. The fact that suicide is up over 35% in the last 20 years. But again, we have millions, billions, trillions being pumped into the health and wellness economy. That's a major problem that needs to be solved. So I was very inspired to, like I said, pivot my career and serve in an organization like Chopra Global. What we do, I mean, we're really in the personal transformation business. And what's also critically important is that, and another area of passion for me is equality. And so it shouldn't be that a healthy and joyful life is only available to people that have means and wealth. And that's the thing about our society and our population. Yes, people are unhealthy. It's not because they don't want to be healthy. They're overwhelmed, or they don't know how to become healthy, or they don't think it's accessible to them, which is not the case. Certainly, if our company has anything to do with it, it's not the case. Our mission is about democratization and making sure that people have access, people of all communities, especially as we're facing the healthcare crisis that we're facing today through the pandemic, and that minorities being frontline and essential workers have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. We have to create easy, accessible tools for them. And so working with people like Mandy and Charlie and Brandon, we've had a number of conversations with him about how we can bring their stories to the world and share their journeys of healing and self-empowerment, and then couple those with the tools for individuals to really harness the power that they have inside. I mean, you mentioned it, Julie, and I'm so glad you did. I mean, what Mandy and Charlie have experienced from a physical perspective would never have been achievable if they didn't have the mental healing and the mental wherewithal to bring all of that together. So really focusing on consciousness-based healing, which is connecting mind, body, and spirit, and how that all can work on one's overall health and well-being is what I'm committing myself and of course my company to. So again, thank you so much for having me here and allowing me to share along with the others.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do with the foundation. And if you could share with us, what are some of those tools? I know when we think of mental health and well-being, general well-being, people usually associate that with having the money to eat right, to exercise, to feel healthy. So if taking money and the monetary aspect off the table, what is something that someone of any background, of any income level can do to be transformative, to transform their outlook in such a dark time?
Yeah. So meditation is one of the staple programs and tools that we offer now. I've offered for 20 plus years. And it's really exciting because you see a lot of that now in the marketplace. And again, I have a 21, 18, and 13-year-old children. And it's really becoming more of a staple and much more acceptable to practice mindfulness. And so we've been doing it for a long time now, and we offer a lot of that programming for free. We're a for-profit company. So our 21-day meditation programs are something that we offer to the world for no charge. And it's really become a global phenomenon and a viral kind of social activity that people create meditation groups together and they come into that and they support one another to keep going with that. But one thing I want to make sure is highlighted for people is that you don't have to necessarily spend 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the evening, or a large amount of time, practicing, if you will. What we really try to lean into is meeting consumers and meeting people where they are and what their reality is. I never want to tell a single working mother with 3 children, you have to meditate for an hour, you have to work out for an hour, you have to eat all organic food, and then yes, you too can have a healthy and joyful life. If you can find 5 minutes of silence, if you can think about ways to to practice gratitude and just thinking about, what you're thankful for, because no matter, despite whatever our circumstances might be, I'm confident that any of us can find just one thing that we can be grateful for. And I'm sure Charlie and Mandy and Brandon probably have lots of stories and examples given what they faced. So it's about simplifying it, Julie, and making sure that people understand and appreciate that it doesn't have to be a super in-depth and super rigorous, practice or commitment, just a little bit, few minutes a day. And also extending gratitude to other people, like letting people just know, you know what, I'm grateful for you. I'm thankful that you're in my life, even if it's through a text. I mean, technology is not all bad, and we can use the phone and we can use this device to really bring that into our lives in a very healthful and meaningful ways, and to share it with other people as well. So again, we're focused on really meeting people and individuals where they are, and more importantly, what their reality is, and helping them find that space in their life, be it 5 minutes a day or 90 minutes a day. We don't want to be prescriptive when it comes to offering self-care tools. But at the end of the day, self-care is non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Well, you certainly cannot underestimate the power of staying connected, especially during a time like this of isolation.
Totally.
Okay, Brandon Marshall, you are up next. Former NFL wide receiver and 6-time Pro Bowler. He is the founder of House of Athlete, fitness of mind and body are truly connected. Brandon, thank you so much for being here, and tell us about your platform and your story as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's an awesome opportunity to be able to share my story, our story. So the mission is to unlock human potential. And how do we do that? By giving the world access to products and services that was set aside for professional athletes. We are the healthiest people on the planet, some of the most efficient people on the planet when it comes to lifestyle wellness. So more people should adopt our lifestyle. But how did I get there? And why am I sitting in this chair now so passionate about what we're doing? I got to go back to 2011, standing on the field where I went to Ricky Williams and I said, Ricky, do you think something's wrong with me? And Ricky Williams looked at me, he said, Brandon, I don't think anything's wrong with you. I just think you say the things that we all want to say, but shouldn't say. Fast forward to after that season, year of the NFL lockout, 2,000 football players displaced. So there was no training. And I was in Waltham, Massachusetts, small town outside of Boston. When I walked onto campus, I did a clinical evaluation, a neurological evaluation, and I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Sat with Dr. Gunderson every day, just trying to figure out who I was and why I thought the way I thought, why I behaved the way I behaved, and what can I do differently moving forward. Every day, McLean Hospital, #2 psychiatric hospital in the world, was my new locker room. The books became my new playbook. Dialectical behavior therapy, self-assessment therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, mentalization therapy was my classroom every single day from 8 to 5. And after that, I would go to Reebok's headquarters because I was a Reebok athlete, then I would train. But it was there on that campus where I first realized that I wasn't born to play football, that football was my platform and not my purpose. It was there where I realized that I want to tell my story to help bridge the gap in the mental health community. 10 years ago, we didn't talk about mental health every single day. And I don't want to sit here and say like we were pioneers in this space, because there were so many people before us for years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years working on these issues that still plagues us today. But we didn't have professional athletes and entertainers standing up and saying, hey, I deal with depression, I deal with anxiety, I deal with bipolar disorder, I deal with substance abuse issues, and really pushing the conversation forward. So our goal then was to tell our story, just to shed light on it, because I couldn't understand why everyone didn't have access to a McLean Hospital. it cost me $35,000 a month to get the help that I needed that ultimately changed my life and saved my family and the people around me. So when I was on campus, I was sitting in self-assessment, and basically self-assessment is a group therapy. We're sitting in a circle. We sit in a circle and we just talk about our day. Nothing really profound about it. You're just talking about feelings and emotions. And one day I'm sitting next to a young lady, and she has bandages on her arms and blood seeping through it. So everybody went around and talked. And when it got to her, she said, last night, I was cutting myself, self-harming myself, to ease the pain. And that was the first time I heard of, anyone self-harming themselves. And then the lady next to her began to share her story. She said, last night I tried to take my life. And then the next lady next to her started talking about, how, she went on a binge the night before and some of the things that she did that she just wasn't proud about. And I looked around, and one was an attorney and an insurance broker, a student. And here I am, this big machismo football player talking about feelings, emotions, and group therapy. And the thing that really shocked me was when we all got up after that hour, walked into the parking lot, and everybody was going back to their normal lives. And, I just was stuck because there was like 200 cars in the parking lot. And I said, man, we're all about to go back in the streets, like everything is okay. And I said, how many other people are out there suffering in silence? So I just felt this responsibility just to do something, and I didn't know what at the time. And from that moment, just start pounding the pavement, trying to bridge the gap in the mental health community. And like I said, back then it was still taboo. In 2010, 2011, we used to say that where we're at in the cancer community then was where we were at in the mental health community then was where the cancer community was at 20 to 30 years ago, where it was the big C. People thought, like, if you touch me, you can get cancer. We just didn't have enough information. There was too much stigma around cancer. And that's where the mental health community was then. And now it's an everyday conversation. It's not a taboo topic anymore. We're having those discussions, not only at the in the halls of Congress, walking, in the Senate and in our schools, at the dinner table, we're talking about it. Now we just need to change the narrative and how we talk about it. So for 10 years, there's so many things my wife and I tried to do, whether, getting the NFL and the NBA to mandate that every single team has a mental health practitioner on staff. We got that done. Walking the halls of Congress, testifying in front of the Senate to allocate $400 million or reallocate $400 million to our communities around the nation, being invited to the Kennedy Forum and being invited to the Vatican to speak to the Pope about mental health. But the reality is we didn't get done what we wanted to get done. Too much stigma, too much fight. And I'm like, man, the cancer community is built of 35 million Americans. Look how they were able to galvanize their community and build things and treatment centers and raise billions of dollars to get people access and the help that they need. But then when you look at the mental health community, there's over 100 million Americans that suffer from some type of mental illness. So why can't we come together and make the same impact? Is the stigma really that debilitating? So the reality is, I was kind of burnt out. And fast forward to my last year playing in the NFL, 2018, December 17, 2018, coming off the practice field down in New Orleans, my last cup of tea, thinking I'm about to be on my way to my first championship with Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Mike Thomas. I step into our meeting room, Coach Payton knocks on the door, pulls me out and says, Brandon, I want to speak to you. He says, Brandon, we're going to let you go. And it was the first time in my life where I was like, wow, this is that moment they say when the game is taken away from you, where, what are you going to do? My entire life since I was 6 years old, the only plan I had was to play sports. That was the only goal. And now I'm faced with this reality that my career is over. Now, it was a great career, played 13 years, but the reality is it's over. So I pack up my things and I head to South Florida, and I walk into my training facility, facility I've had since 2012, training only athletes from 7 all the way to pros, combine training, handling their medical, their nutrition, their training, and their prep, their draft prep work for, combine, NBA and NFL and NHL. And I'm like, okay, we're in this moment now. What do I do? Do I sell this place? Do I bring on a partner, someone who understands operations? And so, you know what, let me pull out that 2014 business plan and see if I can take a shot at it now I'm being a first-time owner operator. So I pull it out and I said, okay, I'm just going to take this thing, and it really is my 13 years experience in the NFL and putting into this facility. Because in my mind, I'm like, we're the healthiest people on the planet, so why don't more people train like us? And Tanya, you talked about the numbers earlier, how massive, this space is. And in my head, it was just like, this is just a passion play for me. But my purpose is the mental health stuff. But in professional sports, when we walk into facilities, we have everything we need, from mental health practitioners now to nutritionists, trainers, everyone. And I said, all right, let me infuse this into this concept and see how the Gen Pop respond to it. When people came in and we start doing things on Wednesday, and Deepak Chopra knows about this, Tanya, as you know, you guys know this, we don't train because on Wednesdays, throughout the off season for pros, we work out Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, the recovery day, Thursday, Friday, we're back at it. Saturday is like a conditioning day. So on Wednesdays here, we'll do a vinyasa flow, do yoga, but then at the end of it, before everybody gets off their mat, we just ask them the question, how are you doing? And remember what that is, that self-assessment. That's what I took at McLean Hospital. How are you doing? We sit in a circle and just talk and get people talking. And what I found was that people were actually expressing themselves and talking about the anxiety that they never talked about out loud, or the depression and how things has been in their life, good and bad, people in tears crying and lives transformed. And I said, holy crap, this is exactly what I've been trying to do with Project 375 in the mental health side for so many years. But it's easier to talk about wellness. It's easier to talk about mental health, and let's make it, ease the entry level and ease the conversation around, is it clinical or is it just fitness or is it just wellness? And so when we start having these conversations and people coming in saying, I just want to cut my body fat in half, I just want to be better, around my cholesterol and BMI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we start that conversation. How are you doing? We were actually transforming and changing more lives on this side than we were on the clinical side. So, like I said, the mission has always been the same, is to unlock human potential, and stumbling across this whole wellness journey and getting people to just embrace the fundamentals of health has really inspired us and fulfilled us again, and given us the energy to help people and help bridge the gap in the mental health community. So, the things that has gotten me through my hard times, and, you guys can Google Brandon Marshall and see from 2006 to 2010, I was just a knucklehead. I was just one of those guys that emotions always ran high. I didn't have the tools, the skills to be able to self-regulate my emotions and get back down to baseline. I had to go to McLean Hospital and learn those things. But when I realized, like, man, what is it that made my journey at McLean Hospital so successful? What did I do every single day that was different than the person that was there and it took 9 months or 2 years to actually get back to living a healthy, effective lifestyle? Every day I trained. Every day I fueled correctly. I understood macronutrients. I supplemented because it was my job. I was obviously mentally fit because I was working on impairment, and I was also working on performance. So I knew how to approach both ends of the spectrum at that point. 4, I recovered, whether it's getting a massage, working on that bum knee, or just taking a day or 2 off and turning off. And then the last thing was tribe. Like, for the very first time, I was surrounded by people, doctors, clinicians, friends, family that was on this journey with me, and I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel isolated. So when I look at all the problems that we have today, I wonder, is it a billion-dollar problem, or is it just a fundamental issue that can be solved by us understanding the fundamentals of just health, and it doesn't have to be solved at a hospital? So many of us are walking around isolated. So many of us are walking around, especially at this time, dealing with anxiety and depression for the very first time. But can it be solved by us just having a lifestyle and a routine around us? So my story is one of pain, but I embraced that pain and found my purpose.
Absolutely. No, you certainly did. And thank you for your bravery and being able to speak out about mental illness. And as you said, back in 2011, when you came out with that announcement, way before its time. I mean, now we hear about mental health on a corporate level and all over social media. So hopefully more people are inspired to come forward and perhaps accept and then face those challenges. So thank you, Brendan Marshall. Mandy, I want to throw it back over to you. I want to talk about the Daily Uplift, and that is something that all of us could use right now, in addition to hearing all of your stories, by the way, which are nothing short of inspirational on a truly top level. So Mandy, what was that moment when you kind of took a look around and really felt that the world needs this right now? I have to put this out there and create this for everyone.
Well, for me, I think like so many people, when the pandemic hit, you just had this sense of imperfect urgency to show up in some way. And I say imperfect urgency because there's so many people out there in business who we sit here and we wait for the perfect name and the perfect logo and the perfect message and the perfect audience. And this perfection paralyzes us, right? I think the wonderful thing, if we can pull anything good out of this pandemic situation, and there are a few things, but the one thing that it did do is that I think it forced everyone to show up with this sense of imperfect urgency. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So for me, I was racking my brain trying to figure out how I can show up for service. And if I can impart one lesson to a lot of people in the business community out there now, it's stop looking and start listening. And the reason I say that is because I started, for me, being bedridden for 21 weeks, right? You start to create ways to mobilize yourself when you are your most immobile self. And as a writer and someone who lives in words, for me, I believe in their powers, and I believe that a perfectly curated collection of a few choice ones can really change our mindset. So I started writing in bed, and just sometimes it wouldn't make sense, and sometimes it would just be a word, and sometimes it was absolute poetry. So it just helped me get to the next breath and the next step. And one day I was so disconnected. I mean, 21 weeks of immobility is a really long time. And if you go through recovery of something once, okay, you disconnect for a bit and you come back. But to go through it twice, you become erased. And so I wanted to find a way to stay connected, because as an ambitious person, there were so many things that I started and didn't finish. And I felt the weight of this coming soon sign just hanging on me. And so one day I just started to share some of the things that I wrote on social media. And when I did, one of the things I realized, and this is a little bit of what Brandon was talking about too, is that every single one of us today is healing from something, whether it's something you can see or something you can't. And people really connected with my journey of healing. And it's not that they went through 2 unexpected spinal surgeries, but even things like the frictions of our everyday life can be related in someone's journey to get us to the next step and the next breath. And so I started this practice in private where I was writing different reflections for people. They would share through DMs or on social or on my website, and they would share a little bit of what they were going through because they saw a piece of their journey in mine. And I would write something for them, just a reflection for them to lean into during those really hard moments when they needed it most. And I saw the reaction and I saw what it actually did for people. And so that day when I kind of looked and the pandemic hit and I thought, man, like the world is healing right now from everything I once did, the immobility, the isolation, a looming new normal, a bit of the unknown. And so I stopped looking and started listening to every single person who wrote into me. And I knew that based on their response that this practice had to be opened up at a public level. And so I called it the Daily Uplift, and I invite people to come on to thedailyuplift.com, share a little bit of their story. It could be a thought or a word or whatever it is they're going through. And in response, I author a personalized note of encouragement and a inspiring reflection. And, you know, a lot of people share them, save them as their wallpaper, or put it somewhere wherever they need it. And I share what I write on my feeds using hashtag the Daily Uplift. And I only use their first name and location. All the stories are kept confidential. And I do that so that other people, it humanizes the words a bit, and so that other people feel less alone in their struggle. And in the first, I think it was 5 days of launching, we reached 5 countries, and there were hundreds of stories submitted from people around the world. A few weeks later, this morning, we hit 36 countries, and we're featured in Forbes and USA Today, and have been translated in quite a few different languages. We've received pictures of frontline workers who were using these in hospitals to motivate them every day, including firefighters. And it's now become a pilot for middle school children because their emotional and mental health being so detached through virtual curriculum is suffering. So there's a middle school pilot that's going on for the Daily Uplift for kids, and even a retail line that's planned for the launch of next year, just to really intercept people in places and with products and and how they need it most. So so I think really my advice to anybody, especially going through transition right now in your business with your brand, is, stop looking and start listening, because the one thing that it does do is I think a lot of its power is not just the words. I guess I'll pat myself on the back with the language, but I also think sometimes it's just helping someone feel seen. Right. So I mentioned earlier about invisible cultures is what I call us, and Brandon talked a lot about mental health, and it's so true. But I think our smartphones got blamed for so much of the invisibility that we have created in ourselves. And it's really, our smartphones are merely a device. Like, they have to be used by someone, right? Like, so but to me, we either use our smartphones or we find another device to make ourselves invisible. And it's really, become quite an epidemic. So it's part of the proceeds for the retail line for the Daily Uplift will actually go to help fund emotional and mental support programs for kids, and especially during COVID, because it's been really hard. And in my dear city of New York City, where I live, where I'm right now, frontline workers have been hit really hard. And some of the stories that have come in really depict a moment in time where they were really all about COVID and the trauma and the effects of it, and then bled into things like anger and disgust of, just, injustice and things that are going on in the world, and fear, a lot of fear of the unknown. But I think the one thing about the unexpected, and I've been living the unknown and the unexpected for quite some time, is that the more unexpected something is, the more there is to learn. And I think we're all living and feeling that right now.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful approach. And you mentioned so many valid points. And we are going through so much right now when you take into account the stressful political climate, to the fact that we're living through a pandemic. And it is so true that you never know what battle someone is fighting that very day. So thank you all for sharing your stories. Thank you for being so open and candid and talking about your struggles and overcoming them, or whether you're in the process of overcoming them. We appreciate it so much, and hopefully everyone can take something from it and move on with the day. Thank you so much. I'm Julie Alexandria, and thank you for joining us here with NYVC Sports. It has been an absolute pleasure. Charlie Davies, Brandon Marshall, Mandy Antonacci, Tanya O'Connor, we appreciate your time here today.
Julie, you were awesome.
Thank
you
you,
so
everyone.
much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. So great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks,
Well,
Jeff.
I wanted to jump in and a whole lot that one can say, having just listened to one of the most powerful and meaningful and inspirational stories. I wrote down humility, determination, inspiration as the three words that come out of what each of you have accomplished and acquired and been able to come through the other side feeling bigger, better, stronger. The fact that each of you are so optimistic in the process, I think says a lot for where we are in the world right now. Now more than ever, people need to remember that we need to take care of ourselves, we need to take care of our families, we need to balance a lot of different things, but we also need to think about the bigger picture that is helping others and all of those around us who are all, everyone's going through their own element of the world. So truly, from the bottom or top or all around my heart, thank you guys. This was a amazing discussion, and I'm already allegedly texting in the background with Mandy about doing a follow-up. We only had a certain amount of time, and we're gonna need to do this again. So when I reach out and say let's do part two, we'll have to do that.
All in.
Awesome.
And so thank you guys. Be safe. Stay healthy.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
We're going to continue on with our run of show. Our next panel is coming to you from across the pond. So Daniel Cohen is in New Jersey, not across the pond, across the border of New York, which is where I am right now. And Francis Tiafoe is in Parma, Italy, getting ready for his next big tournament. So I think they'll both be joining this panel in the video shortly. So welcome Daniel and welcome Francis, who I don't see yet, but should be on momentarily. So hey Francis and hey Daniel. Quick overview. So pleasure to welcome you both. I think this is a natural progression in the conversations of our panels around what's next in investing in entrepreneurship and betting and other areas. How do we overcome adversity during a time when now more than ever, this is something that everyone to one degree or another is experiencing. And now it's a conversation about what does it look like to be an athlete live. Francis is joining us live from Parma, ATP Tour star, one of the top ranked US players in the world. And Daniel Cohen, who needs no introduction since I've known him for so long, I can have that fun. Runs Octagon's media rights consulting division. Francis is arguably the most electrifying young tennis player in the world. So Francis, you got a lot to live up to with that as an intro. But your story is equally as captivating through HBO Real Sports, American Dream. So I highly suggest for anyone who has not watched that on HBO, it's a tremendous view and tremendous watch. Content is still king, and Francis, your story is tremendous. And Dan, what's your portfolio now? About $4 billion?
4.4 last month.
Okay, 4.4. So Francis, you and I will have to figure out what our cut is on that. That extra 400 million he just added will be maybe that'll be our cut. And Dan advises on media rights and athletes and teams and leagues. And there are a few better. So with that, I will get out of the way and let you guys take it away. And I'll see you in about 25 minutes. So Daniel and Francis, I've had that effect on people where they leave while I'm talking. Francis is in Parma, so I'm going to assume it's based upon his Wi-Fi, but you don't know. So I'm going to maybe that you give a monologue for the next 25 minutes.
That is not at all what people want to hear from me. There we go. Francis is back. Jeff, thanks so much for that introduction. Francis, man, you're a champ. You're coming in live from Parma on the ATP Tour after kicking some butt yesterday. And man, let's be real. No one's tuning in to listen to me speak. We got a lot to cover, so let's dive into it. We're gonna cover big topics, right? We got 25 minutes or so, 21 minutes. We got to talk big things like social injustice, your activism. We got to talk your brand relationships. We got to talk social content. We've got to talk where the heck is tennis going next. And maybe you'll teach us a couple things about how the hell you hit a ball so hard with topspin like that at the end of it. So Francis Tiafoe, welcome. Thank you for being here. Thanks so much. Let's dive right into it. All right.
Perfect.
First one up for you, man. You're winning yesterday. You got a big match tomorrow. Been ranked 29th in the world. Talk to us a little bit about how a high-performing athlete like yourself can really build a brand. Like, how do you have time to think about your brand and your brand partners when you're working out every day and you're on the court every day? Walk us through a little bit how you balance that off the court life and that business side of you with the professional sports side.
Right. I mean, I think the biggest thing, right, is obviously picking an agency that you trust, right? You know, guys are going to be working for you endlessly, no matter how you're doing. You know, obviously with got working with someone like me, but a story like mine, obviously there's a lot to be done. But I mean, guys who also think outside the box, I think that helps your brand a lot. So I think that's the biggest thing when you really make your final choice. But I think you make your own luck. And, you know, the better you do, that easier makes your agent's job to obviously build your brand. But kind of goes hand in hand. So I would kind of say, one, you know, agents who are ready to work and ready to work for you, and that are genuine people, because, you know, that's essentially a bigger relationship than just the agent client. You know, they want us to become family, and then also that they have the same vision as you do. You know, they paint the picture. It's identical.
Let's stay on the topic of brands for a second. There's a lot of CMOs that are tuning in and watching this conversation right now. There's a lot of people at brands. And let's be real, brands have their own prerogative, right? Brands want to push a certain message. How do you balance being authentic to yourself, but also delivering on behalf of a brand?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Obviously, I think people can see if you're being real or not, right? So, I mean, I think you can't go wrong being yourself, right? But at the end of the day, you're a person first and an athlete second. So I think, however, whatever brand you're with is, you know, how you are as an individual will go a long way. And obviously what you do day to day as an athlete obviously drives that. But, you know, making sure you're doing all the little details, you know, for example, you know, with tag, you know, make sure after, you know, you have a big win and you're still pumped up and you're all hyped up that you put the watch on for the interview, and you know, you're wearing your fresh Nike Fits, you know, even though for a fresh pair of Yeezys, you're still wearing your Jordans. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, things like that. You know, you know, you're at home and you know, with Nesquik, you know, that I'm with, you know, you pull that out once in a time, you know, kind of really making sure you're doing the right things with your brands and promoting them as much as you can, not only when they tell you to do it at any random time. So, but again, you know, you don't have to be, you know, obsessive with it, but, you know, the love they give you, make sure it's reciprocated.
I like that. The love they give you. It's a two-way relationship.
Right.
Let's jump over to my world where I'm a little bit more comfortable. Let's talk media. Let's talk content a little bit. You know, my team works on this across the board, leagues, teams, athletes, federations. Some of the data that we've seen coming out of COVID is athlete-driven content is on fire, right? Engagement on social platforms with athletes is up over 600%. Talk to me a little bit about the content that you're putting out there in terms of your social media presence and where you see that content play. Are you with me?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna keep moving around because the Wi-Fi keeps coming in and out. But
no worries. Here's what I was saying. I was saying athlete-driven content's on fire. Our group looks at it. We track engagement, 600% increase of just fans engaging with athletes online since COVID started back in March here in the US. Where does that fit into your life?
Right.
Like, how do you, knowing that athlete-driven content for networks, look at what ESPN's doing now and Fox and NBC, how do you think about content? Stick with social media. How does social media play a big role in your life when you think about your content initiatives?
I mean, social media has been everything for a while now, obviously, right? But I mean, with COVID, you start to realize social media literally is everything. You know, the fact that it's still driving everything. I mean, you know, everyone's so in tune, for example, the NBA Finals, just because of social media. You know, I'm in Parma and I can't really tune in, but I'm seeing on Bleacher.
You want LeBron and Lakers, or you rooting for Jimmy Buckets?
Look, Look, I knew it was gonna be tough for Miami. I love me some Jimmy buckets, but Bron and you know, obviously the late Kobe and everything, I would love to see Bron get it done. And which I think will happen tomorrow. But yeah, I'm a big LeBron fan.
So getting back to the content piece, the HBO special on you was just awesome, right? Your story is incredible. Your family's story is incredible. Do you see that being an important part of you both on and off the court moving forward, like participating in more content initiatives or
Right.
not?
I think content's where it's going. I mean, you see Jimmy buckets and these guys doing YouTube channels. I mean, I think these things are big. I mean, the fans can really get close to you and really get to know you, not for hooping, not for playing tennis or whatever your craft is, right? Like people really know because how do these fans really get close to you? Really know what Jimmy buckets or Francis Tiafoe is doing at 8 p.m. when he's not having a tennis racket or a basketball in his hand. Like what does that look like? So I think that's great. And obviously, if you can make time, obviously you guys are busy. You make time for that. I think it's huge for your brand, and I think obviously other brands tap into that. But I think that only helps you grow in the vision. I think that's where the world's going.
Let's talk about probably the most important topic right now, current events. If it's not COVID, we're talking racial injustice, right? You have played a huge role, an outspoken activist. You wore the mask at the Open, right? Black Lives Matter. Talk a little bit about the movement, what it means to you, how you want to work with brands, how you want to work with content producers in supporting Black Lives Matter and racial injustice issues.
Right. I mean, I just want to do my part, right? And want to bring awareness out. And I want, guys, also people of color, or people just to understand this is a real life thing, right? I mean, with everything that's been going on, from Georgia, Breonna Taylor and so on and so forth. It's been sad. It's been sickening. And, I just want to know I'm doing my part. Right? And, me and my girlfriend made an unbelievable video, which got a lot of headlines, which I was so happy about, that it went so far and touched so many people. Glad how many people want to be a part of it. But again, I mean, it's it's something that's an ongoing thing. In DC, I'm gave money to these foundations in the city, trying to make sure these guys are able to still go with everything going on at the highest level. Trying to get relationships with these kids. I think being a representative to these kids is huge. I mean, just having someone that they can relate to, having someone that was in their shoes at one point in their life, that they can bounce ideas off and actually know that being successful, and doesn't have to be playing professional tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Being successful in life is doable. Like it's not about where we're at, where we're going. And so that's kind of been my slogan, since I was young. And so I'm just happy to just be like, hopefully, I can keep leading by example.
I love it, man. You're doing awesome stuff. Talk to the brand folks in the audience right now who are asking themselves and working on this every day. How do I get involved from a corporation, from a brand perspective? How do I get involved in helping support, raising awareness, educating, making change, and getting us further along, like you said, not where we are today, but where we want to go? What advice would you have for those brand managers listening in?
Well, obviously being educated, but just asking the right questions, being on the culture, understand what that means. But I think asking the right questions is huge, and being around it, and doing your part, whether it's, whether it's even just giving back to certain communities, whether it's being in the forefront of different kind of issues. I think personally, helping communities, helping Black-owned businesses, helping young kids aspire to do great things. I think that's also huge. And obviously, when we talk about and being a part of that cause, as far as police brutality, because that's a real life thing. What does that look like? Obviously, that's been taking a ton of people, from guys in the NBA, NFL. I mean, I think all athletes. I think that's an ongoing thing. I think is bigger than us. But yeah, I mean these are kind of things that I think will help move the culture forward. So yeah.
You're doing awesome work there, Francis. Keep it up. Let's switch. We only got about 10 minutes left. I want to talk tennis with you, right? You're one of the hottest young stars on the circuit. You're killing it. How much has the game changed? You haven't been playing it for too long professionally compared to some other folks, right? But from your perspective, you got a next gen perspective. Where was tennis when you first started, and where's it going?
Like it's funny because obviously I've been on tour for a little bit now. People actually, because I've been on tour for a little bit, people start to forget that I'm only 22. But it's crazy. I mean, I think the game's changing as far as, you have to be 26, 27 to start hitting your prime and, all that, because obviously now there's a gap in tennis where, Roger Rafa and Novak, they're getting about damn near the end. Okay, now there's some new guys, Dominic Thiem playing great, Zverev and all these kind of guys, but young guys are believing that they can win early. Young guys are hitting the ball so strong, moving so well, mentally. They can stay locked in for hours on end. So the game pretty interesting. I mean, and then your physiques. I mean, people are houses at 19, 20 years old. So you're looking like a grown ass man at 19, 20. Don't even have a beard yet, but it's you still look the part. So it's pretty good, and it's pretty fun to see. Pretty fun to be a part of. I think these next 10 years is going to be some great tennis. I think it's going to be open. I don't think there's going to be one dominant player or 3 or 4 players like there were with Roger Rafa, Novak, and Murray. I think there's going to be a lot of guys who can take the cake at the end of the week, and I think that's even better for the sport because you just don't know who's going to win. So yeah.
What do you want to see change in tennis? And I'm not asking you this question. Maybe it was perfect timing when I asked the provocative question and you freeze. Are you back? You're back with me. Okay. Francis, what do you want to see change in tennis? Obviously, Djokovic, he's got his ideas. Federer's got his. They're doing things. If you had the power to change a couple things or one thing in tennis, what do you think that would be?
I'm actually a fan of bringing the ATP and WTA together. I think that would help. I think combined events want to make more money, and I'm for equal prize money. They put just many hours. I don't really care that we play 3 out of 5 and they play 2 out of 3. That doesn't really matter to me. It's just that they work hard and put as many hours. And I mean, you look at the top 10 highest paid women athletes play tennis. I think that's great. I think that helps. Enormously. Help more people to play the game of tennis. I love that. So, but I think if we join as one, I think we both can eat. I think everyone's going to eat well. I would, as far as fans' sake, more engagement, get a younger crowd, people being able to move around, talk. Obviously, that you lose that posh part of it, and you lose hearing the ball, so to speak, and feeling the rhythms. But I think you're not going to go to that
crowd.
Say again.
You're all for the rowdy crowd. You want the open. You want to get fired up.
Right. I love that open crowd when I put Roger when I was 19. That was 2017. That was great. The atmosphere is like that. Where it's just absolute like bonkers. You're not gonna go to an NBA game and not say a word. You're not gonna go to the NFL game and just and be like, wait, hold on. It's a big play. Like we need to be quiet. Like he's not gonna do that. And I think that attracts crowds. I think the biggest thing is how do we make tennis more accessible to guys that don't have it. Racket strings, shoes, everything. At times it's a timely cause, but when basketball, football, all you need is a basketball and a hoop, football and some grass.
Good point.
You can get it going. So I think those are the biggest things as far as getting things done. But yeah.
COVID, I'm sure. I mean, I'm personally curious. I don't know the answer to this. How the heck are you getting around the world? You're playing everywhere. How has COVID impacted you from an on the court perspective? And then talk a little bit about, if you can, some of that downtime that it had, right? No one was traveling. What were you doing with that time? So first question, how's COVID impacted you personally and professionally on the court?
COVID actually helped me because I was actually, started the year, I was defending a quarterfinal in Australia, lost to Medvedev in the first round, had a big ranking drop, I was super pissed off, being that classic, feeling sorry for yourself, blah, blah, blah. So then, you just hired my new coach, Wayne. So then we were able to build a great relationship in the 4 or 5 months that we were off. I was working extremely hard, had a great one in New York, kind of actually helped me tweak some things in my game, tweak some things mentally. Came back and been pretty in a good place so far. But as far as the downtime, it's kind of just like reflect, like France TFO. What does that mean post COVID or post whenever they let you play tennis again? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to approach it? And a lot of things get handled. It's not like in real world where you can kind of, I'll handle it later. Well, you got all the time in the world now. There's nowhere to really hide. So I think that was great. I mean, because I'm the kind of guy who lets things go and let's handle things last minute. But as far as everything else, I mean, it's a crazy time. Look, I mean, it's what you make it. Everyone's trying to do the best of what they know to how to make events go, because we need sports. I mean, we just need it. It's point blank simple. People need it. These cities need it. These corporations, everything. I mean, people putting so much money into these things, and to have them not go hurts a lot of corporations. Have a lot of people go under.
A lot of people talk about sports as a religion, right? Sports is another community.
So it helped me in another sense. It didn't, because then after a while I lost purpose. Now it's like, all right, cool. Like you're like, whoa, like what France Diego, what does that mean now? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm still practicing, I'm still out there, but no one's screaming my name, no one's asking for an autograph in 5 months. Feel pretty regular right now. You know what I'm saying? Feel pretty regular. So, yeah, I mean, I felt like
that's really interesting how you use that time though to your benefit to really up your game and get yourself physically, mentally to another level. We're gonna move on.
No, 100%.
No, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, 100%. I was just gonna say, why not?
Yeah. All right, we got 2 minutes and 30 seconds. You were not prepared with this next round. We're gonna rapid fire on you, Francis. We're gonna come at you with a bunch of questions. First thing that comes to your head. We want everyone in the audience to really get to know you on a personal level here. So here we go. First question. Last movie watched on Netflix?
Beyond.
Oh, all right. What'd you think?
Pretty good. Pretty good, actually.
All right. Spotify. Talk to me. Spotify list. Last song you just played. What's the song that you play? Last song played, song that you play right before you go on the court.
Last song I played was probably that new Drake, Laugh Now, Cry Later, and I played a Nipsey Hussle before I go on, Victory Lap.
Who wins the Super Bowl this year?
I'm going Lamar Jackson.
Ravens fan. All right, you're from. I get it. You're from the area.
I'm actually watching football team fan, but now, I love Mahomes obviously, but I want to see the fellow DMV get it done.
Jackson's electric. For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Last vacation spot. Where'd you go?
Bahamas. Unreal.
It's fun. Yeah. You had fun?
Unreal.
Soul Cycle or Peloton?
Peloton's pretty good.
All right. Tell me, if you could go back and play anyone on the court, athlete, celebrity, president, leader, anybody, who would you want to play and why?
Probably Obama. I love that come up. What he did. Meeting him one time and him knowing who I was.
And
Crazy.
I just want to double check. That's the tennis court, not the basketball court.
Exactly. Yeah, the tennis court. Teach him a little something, a little thing or two. He can hoop. He got a little lefty shoot. You know what I'm saying? He got a little lefty shot. Little Isaiah Thomas up in there. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. All right, man. Hey, listen, to wrap it up, you got a quarterfinal match tomorrow morning at 9:30 in the morning. Why the hell are you talking to me? Go get them. Good luck tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're rooting for you. And keep it all awesome on the court, off the court. You rock.
Appreciate it, buddy.
I mean, there are a few more fun conversations between the Wi-Fi of the Italian countryside and Daniel with his beautiful background. Thank you guys, truly. Tremendous dialogue. Francis, I wish you all the best of luck in the tournament and in the years ahead. I want to be able to say I had a conversation with him when he was still rising, and now look at him winning Grand Slams. So keep doing what you're doing, and I will be a fan from not too far away.
Appreciate it, brother.
So thank you both, truly.
You guys take care.
We have our final panel, which wraps up our session for the day. And it's on the resurgence of golf. It's the sport of golf, because it plays on a wide campus course, was one of the first sports to come back. And we learned a lot from the sport of golf by its ability to be leaders, be innovative, be willing to try new things. It's been a tremendous year for the sport. We still have the Masters coming up in a short window of time. And it's just really been a tremendous year. So this next panel is on the resurgence of golf, but for that very reason and that very name. Not to suggest that golf was pre-resurgence, but it's been more of a tremendous year of golf. And what better panelists to represent that topic than the group we have in front of us. So allow me to quickly introduce and get out of the way, because what they will share with you is far more enjoyable than anything that I will say. Annika Sorenstam needs no introduction. World Golf Hall of Famer and one of the greatest. Thank you for being here. Alex Kaplan, who I've known for quite some time and have worked with across Discovery and Golf TV, is battling the sunlight coming in from his window and enduring the climate to be here. Runs Discovery and Golf TV and is a good friend. Chris Wandell, the PGA Tour. I think few people in the world have done more deals. Maybe one of the people he's done a deal with has done about the same number, if not more deals, on the other side of one of his betting partnerships. But Chris has been a longtime friend and an innovator and a leader and a thought producer in terms of where the industry goes next, not just in the sport of golf, but in digital media and technology across the board. And Yu Chang, who again I met back in the early days of Major League Baseball. Did I think my first deal at BAM with Yu Chang when he was running World Golf Tour. We called it WGT Baseball because it couldn't have the word golf in it if it was a baseball game, and is now the president of Top Golf Media. So between the rights owner, the rights holder, a tremendous athlete, an experiential and digital and gaming executive, and a golf personality, I will get out of the way and let you guys take it away. I'll see you in about half an hour, 40 minutes or so. So take it away, guys. Enjoy.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And I'm Jeff Eisenband, broadcaster. I've done a few things in golf. Some of the people on the panel here, I've hosted content for Top Golf with Yu Chang. I was actually on PGA Tour Live broadcasting, live PGA Tour product. Last week, I've done stuff with Golf Magazine, and for MSG Networks, I've contributed golf content. Jeff talked about all the deals you guys have done. I've done 0 business deals, but still excited for today and to get to know a lot of this resurgence of golf, especially on the business side. And when we use the word resurgence, we think everything was smooth sailing, but obviously it was not this year in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I want to go back a little bit to each of your organizations. If you could explain how you had to adjust in this year going back to March. And I think Chris Wandell, you're the person we need to start with, because the PGA Tour was in the middle of its trademark event, played one round of the Players Championship, and then went on hiatus. How did the PGA Tour adjust this year?
Wow. Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks to the rest of the group for being on with me. I think we're all humbled to be here with Annika. You know, I wish we could just sit here and ask you questions, Annika. But to go back to March, it seems like a few years ago. I think in everybody's mind, the Players Championship was played that week that the NBA shut down. We had completed one round, and our commissioner came on TV and said that we're canceling the event. And I think from there, it's been pretty quiet. In the weeks following that event, I think we were all trying to figure out when our sport's going to restart again. When is the PGA Tour and when is golf going to be able to be played again? And how do we get our business back going again? So I think we announced that week that we were canceling all events through the Masters and planning to restart at the RBC Heritage. A few weeks after that, we canceled more events, and then aligning with all of the other golf organizations, including the LPGA, the PGA of America, and Augusta, we put out a new schedule in the early part of May that had our restart at the Charles Schwab Challenge the second week of June. So once we put that stake in the ground and said we're going to start playing again, we want to conclude our season with the Tour Championship and reschedule the U.S. Open and the Masters for later in the fall, we felt like things could kind of get back on track with every part of our business, with the exception of fans and ticketing and things like that. During that time, it was an incredible challenge, just trying to come up with content that made sense for our fans, working with our media partners like Golf TV and other partners like Topgolf, just to get things kind of going again and keeping the momentum going. There's a lot I can share on that topic, but I want to make sure that some of the other panelists have a chance to answer the question.
Yeah, we're going to get to that, but because you did mention Golf TV there, for Alex, for people that don't know Discovery Golf, you know, having Golf TV, having Golf Digest, Golf TV having the rights to the PGA Tour basically everywhere except the United States, having an exclusive content deal with Tiger Woods. There's a lot going on but from the content side, the live product around the world stops. And how do you adjust to that as a content provider?
Yeah, well, I think I was with Chris the night before it was canceled down in Ponte Vedra, and that was really the kickoff to the PGA Tour season, and for Golf TV, sort of the beginning, really the sort of true beginning of our season. And so just taking a step back, Discovery Golf is really made up of two components. One piece is Golf TV, which, as you said, is a live streaming product that carries all of the PGA Tour rights, and in many markets, European Tour and some of the other majors everywhere in the world. The other piece of our business is Golf Digest, which Discovery acquired about a year ago, which is, you might imagine, has moved from being a print publication to a primarily digital play, with the real focus on playing golf and engaging with the sport, not just watching it. And so we had to make a very quick pivot. The reality was Golf TV was going to be difficult to exploit the way we wanted to starting in March without any live content. We certainly worked very hard with Chris and his team at the tour to put on the best replays that we could think of. We did a whole retrospective on Tiger. I think that took about a month. But ultimately, we had to understand that without live golf, it was going to be difficult to deliver our customers what they expected. They bought the product, they subscribed to the product to watch live golf. So we tried to give them what they want, but we're also really liberal in crediting them and saying, hey, we're going to make it free for a month because we want to keep you engaged with us, but we're not going to ask you to pay. And so that was number one. On the Golf TV side, we tried to be really honest with ourselves and with our customers about what was going on, and really not to try to cheat the system. The good news for us is that on the Golf Digest side, really from day one, things were blowing up. Even before golf courses opened up all over the US, that they were some of the first sort of outdoor sports you could do. People were outside just hitting golf balls in their backyard. Our traffic on Golf Digest was higher in March and April in many parts of the country than it was the previous year. So we tried to pivot and take a lot of that sort of content, that playing content, and certainly exploit it on Golf Digest, but also exploit it on Golf TV. And then, obviously, once golf came back, and this may be a different topic, Jeff, but it just started to blow up. The level of engagement, the number of people buying the product, watching the product, the length of time they were spending with us just was literally in many cases 2x what it was the prior year. So we kind of hung in there at first and then really reaped the benefits once golf started to come back.
Yeah, I think in one word, when we talked a couple of days ago, Alex, you brought up the word participatory, as I've tried to enunciate that. And I think that contributes so much to the resurgence of golf in 2020. Annika, well, Jeff Folk gave you a great intro. I just have to add for the people out there, 72 LPGA Tour wins, 10 major championships. And, something really important right now is founder of the Annika Foundation, which you're so active with. And you personally have a lot of events that you run, and there's a lot of instruction that goes on in your life. And a lot of that is done, if not all of it, in person. So how did you have to change, but also with this high number of people interested in golf in this pandemic, kind of adjust to everything?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting time. I was actually at the Players Championship also when all this was coming down. And just a month prior, we had to cancel we have 7 global tournaments. We had to cancel one of our tournaments in China because of this. At the time, we really didn't know. I think we all had heard of COVID-19, but we really didn't know if it was going anywhere. And so we canceled that in February. And then I was at the Players, and then everything else shut down. And that's when I realized that I think a lot of our global events will not take place this year. So yeah, out of these 7 events, we've only been able to host one, which was in January. Which is in just here around the corner in Florida. But yeah, as a player, a philanthropist, a corporate ambassador, and a mentor, you can imagine that it's just been very, very different for us and the Annika brand, and especially the foundation. So we have to, just like some of the other presentations, you kind of go back to the drawing board and say, we're not going to shut down, but what can we do to keep relevant? How can we continue to share the knowledge? How can I continue to reach out to these girls and inspire them? Because that's really what we're about. Our tagline is more than golf. And so we wanted to try to keep in touch with them. And just like we're doing right here, I feel like I've been in front of a screen, not always sitting, but it's been a lot of instructional session, whether you have a putting green, like a lot of corporate events that I have done is, the company will send out putting mats to their customers, and then they will set it up in their office or their apartment or in the kitchen, and I will do a virtual putting lesson to go through the basics. And like you said, there's so many people are interested in the game of golf, and they've always had time. Especially early in this pandemic, a lot of people were not able to go outside as much when you were like in the northern states where the wind, it was still cold and snowy. So a lot of them will be in front of a screen, working on the putting stroke, and hopefully that would help them when they stepped out later in the summer. But yeah, it's been very interesting time. There's no doubt. Obviously, I'm glad to see competitive golf back, but there's no fans, as there's no hospitality, which is normally I would be. Today I'm probably in Chicago for one of the women's major, the KPMG LPGA Championship or PGA Championship that they're playing. So I try to just be as keep the exposure going, try to connect as much as we can with sponsors. These people have been, I think, very creative. I know the LPGA and the PGA Tour are really trying to get content out there, whether it's just instruction or whether it's just, engaging in different seminars like we're doing here. So, but I'm so glad that golf is considered a COVID sport. I don't know if that's a compliment, but I think we all know that rounds are up the last few months, participation and the members of the clubs are more active than they've ever been. So, everything has not been that bad, and hopefully we can capitalize on these and continue to keep these members or these participants or green fee players, keep them interested in the game of golf, because that's what, the last 12 years I've been focusing on, just growing the game of golf. So, hopefully we come out of this and we'll see more people enjoying the game of golf. That's so great.
Yu Chang, we've had a lot of conversations so far about professional golf, about competitive golf, about being at a club on a course. Well, Topgolf's tapped into something in this country and around the world, getting people, turning the driving range into such an interactive experience. Of course, a lot of Topgolf locations were forced to shut down at the beginning of this pandemic. I remember I followed Topgolf accounts. I think the first one that opened back up was in Oklahoma. Thought that's going to be a tough trip for me from the New York area, but for Topgolf, the way that you guys have had to stop and pivot, what has it been like over these last few months?
Yeah, I think we're really lucky that our roots are in kind of a startup, mentality, and that's the type of people we hire. And, we've really had to, adjust and reinvent ourselves. At the very beginning, it was all about sort of just taking care of our people and be compassionate. We had over 22,000 associates at the time, and we unfortunately had to either lay off or furlough almost all of them. And then we built that back up to almost 20,000 again now. And just that wear and tear on being a person is tough. And so we really focused on that. We're very lucky now that all our venues are open. We actually even opened up a venue in Monterrey, Mexico, that's doing really well. And that, we really focused on reinventing the Topgolf experience to be really safe. And we are also fortunate that almost all our facilities, the majority activity takes place outdoors. And so it's one of the few places where you can go with your whole family and people that you've been quarantined with and have a better, more fun, very, very safe experience. And we take safety really, very, very important to us. And, from the beginning, even before COVID, our role we view as really to grow the game of golf. And, if you look at a few NGF studies and others, of the new golfers who entered the game in the last three or so years, close to a quarter of them said that they discovered golf or started it at Topgolf, and then moved on to green grass golf. So, we've been adjusting, and we, like the others, saw massive growth in our digital assets. So we really doubled down on that. And, we view our other role as to really bring people together. So in this COVID time where you feel isolated and alone, we try to connect you digitally. And we run a ton of virtual tournaments now and esports and streaming, of which you've been part of. But so as, Graham McDowell and Adam Wainwright and MLB and, Seth Curry and NBA. We're all running tournaments and raising money and trying to do all the virtual events, that aren't able to happen right now in physicality. And so, we're just really embraced it. And, we're doing the best we can. We're happy that the game is doing well.
Yes, Yu Chang mentions I hosted a stream with NBA players. We had Danilo Gallinari was talking to me while playing WGT golf while his wife was making pasta in the background. So definitely a different sort of interactive experience. And a lot of those, we see it in the NBA bubble. That's a perfect example of where golf has met with new people who might not have been fans in the past. Annika, I don't want to date you, but you turned professional before I was born. And so you've been around the game a long time. And my question for you is, when you look at the accessibility and the inclusivity of golf at the beginning of your start as a pro to now, what have you noticed?
Well, I stopped playing golf when I was 1, so that's. But now, kidding aside, you're right. A lot of things have happened, and being a European, I've kind of seen that side of it, and then being in the U.S., seen this side of it and experienced it. It's really come a long way. I think of when I started. I was 12 years old when I started, and there was really, there were no junior girls. Hardly any junior girls. I have a younger sister. I think it was the 2 of us at the club. And then the rest of us was boys. So, for us to play, we need to kind of hang out with the boys. So, fast forward just on that note, 15 years ago, there was, they figured out that it was 15% of our juniors were girls. And today, I don't even know the after COVID numbers or during COVID, but before COVID, it was 33% of all the juniors were girls. So it's literally doubled in 15 years, which obviously I'm really thrilled about, because that's where we spend our time with junior girls. And so, again, when I started, there was hardly anybody. And there were there hardly any junior clubs at the time, but you couldn't find any junior clubs. And then even in college, I remember just playing in men's clubs. I remember wearing a men's hat, and I have a very, little head, and the hats was just nothing fit. Golf clothes, it was men's extra small. There was nothing for women. And so, things have really come a long ways. You go to golf clubs and now, you have obviously groups for women and so forth. And there's a ton of stuff that have changed. I mean, now I have the Annika collection just targeted for women, and, it's getting there. And I think that, to grow the game, which is obviously a big topic here, is to understand the demographic, and there's still a lot of room for women. So I think when we do initiatives, you need to talk to women, what makes them feel comfortable. It can be a very intimidating sport, as everybody knows. But bringing women in with other women, kind of ease that pain for some of them. So, there's a lot of things I think have been done in the sport to kind of more neutralize the gender and just feel like, okay, we're golfers. It's not just men and women, so that everybody feels comfortable. And if you think of it, I can't actually think of any other sport where family it goes so well with family, old, young, men, women, and professional and amateur, you can all play together. So golf has so many benefits. So I'm glad that golf is in the forefront of this issue and hopefully continue to be so.
I think it's just a few protein shakes and some steak, and you could shoot 9 under at TPC Summerlin. No, I digressed. What's going on today? Bryson DeChambeau's 9 under, if anyone was wondering. Annika, also, I believe that's the Cutter and Buck. That's your collection that you're wearing there. If anyone is wondering about Annika's beautiful line that she has on right now.
Thank you.
Little plug for you right there.
I appreciate it.
Chris, the PGA Tour, as you alluded to at the beginning, was one of the first professional sports organizations to come back from this pandemic. And I believe numbers were higher than people might have expected after some of those charity events we should mention that the PGA Tour was involved in that led in to the actual competition coming back. How have you tried to keep those new viewers that you've been getting coming in?
It's a great question. I think kind of time will tell as golf in this time of the year, especially, and as 2021 begins, as to how when things return to normal versus many of the other sports. I think that since we started back, in the middle of June, our numbers across almost every metric, obviously from a media perspective, have been through the roof. I think our U.S. media partners in Golf Channel, NBC, and CBS. Many of our international partners, including Discovery, have experienced, as Alex said, significant and shocking increases in consumption and time spent and tune in and sort of diversity of audience. We see that across our subscription product in PGA Tour Live, which you know very well, Jeff, because you called it for us last week. We appreciate that. Our unique users between that 3-month period, if you look at it year over year, we're up kind of 60-70% range, which is huge for us at that time of the year. Our time spent per user on our digital platform, our PGA Tour Live, was up, double-digit percentages, and users are spending kind of an average of 3 hours and 21 minutes per week, which is huge from a live sports consumption perspective. In terms of how we continue to engage them, we think that we're doing a pretty good job so far of trying to kind of continue the drumbeat of building familiarity between our fans and some of the most popular players that have won. You mentioned Bryson DeChambeau, who just won the US Open. He's leading today at the Shriners in Vegas. And I think as we go into next year, we are incredibly excited to kind of continue to build that drumbeat of fan growth.
There's a guy who I think people have heard of named Tiger Woods, who came back into PGA Tour glory about two and a half years ago now. And Alex, you guys at Golf TV have landed an exclusive partnership with him. How has that content partnership been, and how important is it for you two? Because for all of you guys, Tiger's not going to be around playing on the PGA Tour forever, I don't think. But how important is it to harness what he's brought back to golf to create fans for the long term?
Yeah, well, we certainly hope that he'll keep playing forever. So I can try to convince myself of that. But I think you're right. We obviously need to prepare for a world where when he's not playing. But also taking a step back, we closed our deal with Tiger a bit over a year ago, and it's a really interesting deal. I think it's the first time he's sort of done a content-oriented deal. Certainly, it's an endorsement in many respects. We have the rights to use his image and things like that. But that's not why we did the deal, and that's not why he wanted to work with us. This was a way and a means for Tiger to kind of more authentically tell his story directly to fans via the Golf TV platform and now via the Golf Digest platform. So a lot of what we've done with Tiger has been not about following him on the course. Everyone does that, and we want everyone to do that because he's so popular. And so we just launched a few weeks ago the second series. It's called My Game. It's an instructional platform, all about Tiger, teaching fans, golfers, getting inside his head about why he's so good, how he approaches shots. This year, literally, we get into the weeds. How does Tiger hit it out of the sand? And it's been really a phenomenal success for us. It drives an amazing amount of engagement, even outside the U.S. and certainly inside the U.S. We have a subscription instruction product on Golf Digest called Golf Digest Schools, and we're seeing really amazing growth there. And the thing I'll say about Tiger is, I'm actually, all joking aside about him playing forever, we get to, because in digital you can measure everything. We know that anytime we post anything about Tiger, frankly, whether it's him talking about what he had for breakfast or him getting into the details of his round, it drives engagement and eyeballs beyond anything else you see in golf. And quite frankly, you see that on the ratings. And while we can't get him to play golf until he, potentially on the PGA Tour until he's 65, I actually think Tiger wants to be involved in the game. And so if we can find ways for him to continue to tell stories, I think Annika is a great example of that. She's still involved in the game in so many different ways. I think if Tiger can find creative ways, and if we at Discovery and the other folks at the PGA Tour and others on this call can help keep him involved in a way that gets fans interested, eyeballs on the game, well, that's a really positive story for everyone.
Yu Chang, one way that you guys at Topgolf, and we should talk about, you come more from the Topgolf media side, especially, and Topgolf as a brand has had this opportunity to engage fans interested in golf to a level off of the actual, whether it be the mats, whether the actual course. How have you used those sort of, I'll call it golf accessories, to connect with fans?
Yeah, I blink and now all of a sudden I've spent 20 years doing non-traditional golf. My journey started in golf with WGT, where my co-founders and I had this dream that we could sort of democratize the game by bringing a lot of people into the game of golf by making a digital golf game that was free to play. And it was really one of the first large free to play golf games ever. And a little different than the great game, that the PGA Tour and EA had done. But we wanted a game that everyone could play, regardless of, what your income is and if you owned a console or not. And that proved to be very true. And I was very lucky to get merged up with Topgolf here, where they believe the same things. And we really, truly believe that the resurgence of the game and the growing the game is embracing, wherever your background is, whatever your race is, whatever your gender is, sort of leveling the playing field. And digital is what, the tool and the platform that we use to do that. And that's why we spend so much time, building out our esports platform. That's why we invest in WGT. That's why we invest in TopTracer to basically help other driving ranges use technology to make the game of golf more fun and more accessible, to help with scoring. We are just about to launch an Angry Birds version of Topgolf to really bring kids and families into play, so that you still hit a golf ball, but you can see the birds fly and you get to destroy a few structures in the virtual world, which is hugely satisfying, especially if you just watch the debate, you might have a little anger. So you got to get that stuff out. And, we believe that's what the digital platforms are for. And during the pandemic, it's all those digital assets, all the ancillary accessories that we built that are just, expressions of the Topgolf ethos that we want everyone to play. We welcome everybody. And we want to connect people, because if you can connect with people, play a game together, and break bread, we think that the world will be a better place, because, you get to know people better, and it's all about, us being humans and sharing common experiences. And, that's my charter every day, is to create more and more experiences that do that.
One experience that a lot of golf fans and non-golf fans are having right now is betting. I'm looking right now. Patrick Cantlay was plus 1850 to start the week. He's 3 under through 5 holes. That's something that someone could have jumped on before the week didn't. Chris, you at the PGA Tour, you guys have jumped into the sports betting world really rapidly, I'd say, in the last year or two. Of course, fantasy golf being around for a bit as well. When I did PGA Tour Live, I came in the door. They said, you're going to have to do 2 reads for DraftKings Sportsbook. So that's how embedded it is in what's going on. How did betting change, especially while golf was one of the only games in town. How did betting affect the resurgence in 2020?
Sure, it's been really important to us, and while we're diving in head first, we are still taking it slow in some respects. I just think there's a lot of activity going on with some of the partnerships we've announced recently. And our executive team has really challenged us as an organization to start to help our fans understand what plus 1100 means. So as betting is rolled out from a state by state basis, legally in 21 and beyond, that fans know what they're talking about and they can kind of be educated by us. So I think number one, it's always been a strong fan growth tool. We think that we're reaching new types of fans and a more diverse set of fans as betting gets rolled out. We also think that as legal sports betting rolls out in the United States and even internationally where it's been legal for a long time, the PGA Tour getting engaged in a big way is going to create sort of a more connected experience with even hardcore golf fans that don't know anything about betting. I think as all of us that play, the first thing you do on the first tee when you're not in competition is ask what you're playing for. So betting has always been inherent to the game of golf, and we've kind of embraced that. And I think that when the shutdown happened, we accelerated a lot of our initiatives just because we knew the PGA Tour was going to come back faster than most sports. And the fans aren't allowed on site for many of our events, for all of our events this year. So we needed a way to help engage. So we very quickly approached the market. And in the months of July, August, and September, we announced official betting operator deals with DraftKings Sportsbook, BetMGM, PointsBet, and FanDuel. So now all of these betting operators have, they've acquired the assets that they can use to promote our sport and try to engage their audience as states roll out. They become like a really interesting part of our content strategy as well. We work with a lot of our media partners. We're in deep planning phases with our US media partners. We've talked to Alex and team about what does the future look like from media consumption and betting content perspective. We announced a deal earlier this year, and it's really been getting going since the restart with the Action Network, which is a betting focused content platform. So we launched Golf Bet with them. That's been very successful as well. So we're really excited to learn as much as we can, experiment with our partners and with our fans to figure out what they like and what resonates.
Alex, he mentioned you there from a content provider perspective. How do you adjust to sports betting being such a prevalent part of all golf tours?
Yeah, I think it just drives more engagement. And so for us, we think about it in sort of two buckets. One, when we're in our sort of Golf Digest hat, it's a big part of the editorial approach that we now take. We're not just writing about who might win the BMW championship. We have to write about all the different betting options that exist there. I mean, so you're working closely with Chris and the Golf Bet team, there's lots of ways to kind of integrate that content. The really exciting piece, and we're not there yet, is ultimately to integrate in the video assets with a betting platform. So imagine being able to watch a PGA Tour event in an app experience and in real time, whether it's partnering with like DraftKings or a FanDuel or whoever a betting operator might be in a different country, to be able to literally bet on the screen as things are happening. And we're not quite there yet. And I think there's probably a lot of sports that want to have that vision, but it's really within our sights. And in our case, it's within our rights as well. So we're excited about where that's going to go in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I will second that it's kind of, there will be a time in the next few years where I think you can be watching the golf product and betting side by side. We're running a little low on time. So I want to do from each of you, I want to get an idea of where you think the world of golf is going in the next, say, 5 years. Annika, I want to start with you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think today and COVID has really shown everybody that golf is a sport for a lot of people. I think it's showing the benefits of golf from a health perspective, being outdoors, families, what I mentioned many times. Obviously I would love to see the women get some more exposure. I think this betting is really fascinating. I think that's opening a new demographic, as was mentioned, and also Topgolf has a lot to do with the future. So I want to say golf is in good hands. I think we got some great momentum on the side. Let's just take advantage of this and continue this fun ride with the game of sport. I'm going to continue on my end with try to inspire the next generation of young girls around the world. Like I said, we have 7 now. And then we touch over 600 girls a year. So my goal is to get over 1,000. So we have a big mission, but nothing is holding us back. On the contrary, we're still very excited about our initiatives.
Yu Cheng, what's next?
Yeah, I look forward to, a really, really fun sport. I think that, embracing the entertainment value of it, letting people have fun on the course, some of my best times are just grabbing a 6-pack in one club and going down. I embrace a world where there's more of that in golf and much more diversity. I want to see a lot of different people playing golf and being really successful at it from non-traditional places. I really think that's exciting.
One club, Yu Cheng. Alex, final thoughts.
Yeah, I think, one of the challenges golf has always faced is fragmentation. And as the world becomes more global, there's a lot of tours, there's a lot of different events. And I think the industry is really is figuring out that, man, if we could come together, whether it's men's and women's tours, different federations, and create a more of a one-stop shop so fans can really understand the world of professional golf and it's more global, I think there's a massive opportunity.
And Chris?
I'm excited about the potential for the future of our game from both a participation and competition perspective. The guys on the PGA Tour who are out there winning right now, like Bryson and Matthew Wolff and Colin Morikawa, they were all inspired by Tiger. And on the LPGA Tour, all the late teens, early 20s players were all inspired by Annika. And I think with the popularity of the sport right now, I just can't wait for kind of that next generation of players to kind of come out and show what they can do.
Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to all who watched there. The resurgence of golf.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. What a tremendous panel. I just saw that I think Bryson had 6 eagle putts today, which I've only had 5. I think Annika's, but
You mean in your life? No?
I've played with 2 people on this panel. I won't name which 2, but I've never seen 6 eagle putts in a round. So first of all, thank you. That was a fun dialogue and really appreciate everyone being a part of it. Over the course of the last 2.5 hours, we've covered a ton of material. We've covered sports rights in media. We've covered overcoming adversity. We've covered what's going on in the world of tennis live from Italy in the middle of an active event. And we've covered the explosion of the sport of golf and many things are to be taken away from this. I think first and foremost is people won't remember necessarily what goes on each day to day, but they will remember how you make them feel. So I'll take a quick sip of my water and suggest that we all choose kindness and have a little bit of humility, determination, inspiration, compassion, and kindness. I want to thank a few people that were involved in making all this happen. Our advisory board at the Global VC Sports teams, who've been tweeting and active in the background. The Live Like team has been involved in a lot of our engagement and interactive tools, and the Advertising Week team has been absolutely tremendous as we pulled together quite a bit of content over a course of 2.5 hours. I loved what Francis said earlier on, that you can't go wrong with being yourself. We're a person first, an athlete or an executive second. And I think that's critical now more than ever. We are now intended to turn the cameras over to Kevin Hart, so that he'll be all warmed up by this audience, although I do believe that Kevin Hart perhaps should be warming up for us. So there's a joke on the fly. Very apropos to last night's vice presidential debate. Couldn't let that one go. No intended joke there, but apropos. So I will leave it with the following. Thank you, everyone. Truly an inspiring and tremendous panel. Our goal across Global VC Sports is to support our athletes, our leagues, our teams, broadcasters, publishers, brands, agencies, partners, entrepreneurs, and investors. We are one team. Sports never stop. Fans never stop. So be creative, innovate, and we'll do this again soon. So truly, thank you, everyone, for being a part of this, and be safe. It's a crazy time now more than ever. Mask up, and hopefully see you at an event again soon. Thank you.